A young Aizawa flinched in fear, tears welling in his eyes as a bright, blurred shape loomed toward him. Claws like marks slashing through the air around his head, stripped and shaking. Aizawa stood before Suzuki and his friends on the baseball field. They mocked his lack of control, stripped him of any dignity. The torment continued, each hit and jeer rewarded with points as if it were a game. Suzuki grinned and told him to smile, insisting they weren't bullying him, just having fun. Years later, in a hall filled with old classmates, a middle-aged woman greeted an old friend, remarking how long it had been. A banner outside marked the date, the end of May. Liansanin Arshii, the woman, now 30 laughed off compliments about her looks. Nearby, guests gossiped about another woman who used to be considered plain but now stood out. Whispers spread through the crowd, guessing she'd had plastic surgery, while others noted how many men surrounded her now compared to their school days. A commotion rippled through the reunion as Suzuki arrived, dressed sharply, drawing stares and playful jabs about his late entrance and effortless cool. Suzuki brushed off the teasing, revealing he was the one who had organized the reunion. Another old classmate greeted him warmly, surprised he'd actually shown up. Members of class Senbi R gathered in numbers greater than expected. One woman admitted she'd worried they might not manage to reunite everyone after 20 years apart. Aizawa stood silently at the entrance, watching the crowd from behind, reflecting that their class had always shared unusually strong bonds. Guests praised Suzuki's success, calling him an elite banker with a rumored salary exceeding Yaolunununununun a year. As the event neared its start, attendees remarked that only people living comfortable lives would bother showing up to something like this, unlike those with nothing to be proud of. Taking the microphone, Suzuki introduced himself as the organizer of the reunion, prompting cheers and recognition as the former student council president. He thanked everyone for coming despite the short month's notice, joking about how nostalgic it felt seeing all their familiar faces again, drawing laughter from the crowd. One woman called for a fun night just like their school days 20 years ago. As people scanned the room, a name tag caught the eye, Aizawa Yuichi. Someone muttered in disbelief. Certain it had to be a joke, Aizawa stood in the center of the room, silent, surrounded by classmates whispering and staring, tension building around his unexpected presence. He remained motionless amid the crowd, alone despite being surrounded, every eye in the room fixed on him. Suzuki froze mid-Jan's speech, staring at him in disbelief, quietly questioning why Aizawa would have come here at all. The scene shifted back to their school days, memories resurfacing of Aizawa being beaten and mocked outside their old classroom, Suzuki and the others laughing as they closed in on him. Back in the present, Aizawa gripped a small mirror, his reflection catching the light. His expression shifted into a quiet, unsettling smile as he uttered two words. Well then, Suzuki raised his glass, offering a toast to the fond memories of their middle school days. The crowd echoed cheers, though a few classmates simply stayed silent, their expressions tense. Whispers spread among the group, someone confirming that the quiet man standing before them was indeed Aizawa from class Senzan R. Doubts followed, questioning why someone bullied to the point of dropping out would ever bother showing up. Aizawa stood still, acknowledging his own name in a low voice. Nearby, others muttered about his mental strength, wondering aloud who had even invited him. A woman approached him hesitantly, asking if he remembered her. When he confirmed that he did, she admitted she had always regretted the way she treated him back then and had wanted to apologize for years. She continued, confessing that she never once helped him during that time. Nearby memories surfaced of her friends mocking him for crying, calling it lame while she stood by and said nothing. Aizawa told her it was fine even if she still carried guilt over it. She shared that she was married now, with children, and considered herself happy. With a faint smile, he assured her he held no resentment toward her at all. Two more former classmates approached, admitting they too never intended to bully him and hadn't done anything they considered that severe. They wondered aloud if they should apologize as well. One of them mentioned Suzuki's name, quickly backpedaling and insisting he hadn't been involved either. Aizawa's expression remained unreadable as he studied them. Suzuki stepped forward, greeting Aizawa directly for the first time since the party began, remarking that it had been a while. He added that he was glad they could see each other again after all these years. Aizawa spoke quietly, saying they had all been lonely once he stopped attending school midway through their third year. Suzuki recalled that everyone had wanted him present for graduation, prompting confusion from a bystander asking what kind of game he was describing. Suzuki clarified it was a game where they bullied him. He reminded Aizawa how they used to pass the time together before graduation back then, back when things had felt slow and uneventful. Aizawa admitted he had wanted to see Suzuki too, praising him for staying exactly the same after all this time. Elsewhere in the hall, another handshake and greeting unfolded between classmates, the mood polite and composed on the surface. A woman called everyone together, camera in hand, announcing it was time for a celebratory group photo. As people gathered, Suzuki draped an arm around Aizawa's shoulder, pulling him close and murmuring his name under his breath. Suzuki complained that the party was ruined now that Aizawa had come, accusing him of not reading the mood and ruining what was meant to be fun. He demanded to know exactly why Aizawa had shown up. He pressed further, mocking Aizawa's silence as the same trait that always made him so irritating, before recalling aloud how Aizawa never once resisted, even when they made him eat garbage, threw balls at his face, or shoved his head into a toilet. Suzuki mused aloud, wondering if the bullying would have stopped had Aizawa simply resisted at the time. He declared that the one who gets bullied is always the one to blame, his tone cold and matter-of fact as he reached to take the microphone back, telling Aizawa his stiff expression wasn't fitting for the mood. Aizawa smiled easily, remarking that he was good at smiling, as if the comment had no effect on him at all. Later he returned home, greeted by the sight of his old middle school building and the banner marking their graduating class. Inside, his wife and daughter welcomed him warmly, both smiling as he stepped through the door. His daughter asked if everyone at the reunion had changed, and his wife added that meeting people from 20 years ago must have been amazing. She asked if the reunion had been fun, and he simply answered that it was. Alone with his thoughts, he admitted to himself that he honestly hadn't thought about Suzuki at all, recalling only the shabby clothes he'd been wearing that night. He reached out as if grasping at something invisible, insisting to himself that this, his current life, was reality. He thanked the house quietly, reflecting that losers would always stay losers, while it wasn't often that someone managed to turn their life around the way he had. The next morning, he noted he was in a good mood, crediting his family for it as his wife prepared breakfast and his daughter watched from the table. His daughter Shiori headed off to school, her mother calling out for her to have a good day. At school, a classmate greeted her warmly, but when she opened her locker, she found a note reading, "Gross," and quickly hid her reaction, insisting nothing was wrong. Inside her locker sat another note with a single word, "Die." She said nothing, brushing off a friend's greeting as she stared at it. In the hallway, she kept walking, quiet and distant, while other students greeted her without receiving much response. Aizawa, now her homeroom teacher, watched her pass through the hall, his expression unreadable as their paths crossed. The next morning, Shiori greeted him with a polite good morning, addressing him as Aizawa-sensei. He asked if she had a moment to talk in an empty classroom. She asked what he wanted to discuss, and he led her toward the AV room. He asked directly if anyone had been harassing her recently. He pointed out that she had lost her history textbook the week before, suggesting someone might have stolen it. Watching her reaction closely, she laughed it off, insisting nobody was harassing her and that he was overthinking things. He rolled up his sleeve, showing marks left from experience, telling her plainly that he understood harassment firsthand. Startled, she asked what had happened to his arm, and he answered simply that a certain person had done it to him back in middle school. She looked stricken, calling it horrible that someone could do such a thing, then realized what he meant, asking quietly if he himself had once been bullied. He confirmed it with a simple yes, telling her that in the end people capable of that kind of cruelty couldn't really be considered human. His thoughts turned to Suzuki, addressing him directly in his mind, warning that if anything ever happened to Suzuki's own daughter, the fault would fall entirely on the one being bullied. With a faint, unsettling smile, he vowed to protect her with everything he had, silently asking Suzuki whether he could have said the same. The morning meeting began with the principal addressing the staff, reminding them that recent news had been covering the growing problem of bullying across schools. He adjusted his glasses, warning the teachers that such reports could easily influence impressionable students, and urged everyone to stay alert and prepared. Aizawa sat quietly at his desk, listening as the principal declared that he was counting on every teacher to uphold the school's reputation. The principal smiled proudly, stating his goal for the school to record 0 cases of bullying this year, just as it had the year before. The meeting closed and one of the younger teachers, Yazaki, asked if anyone had further concerns to raise before everyone returned to their duties. The school bell rang across the quiet campus, signaling the start of another working day for the students and staff. In the hallway, Yazaki approached Aizawa and asked how he was adjusting, since it had only been 2 months since he transferred to the school. Aizawa admitted he still felt unsettled by certain values held within the school, a comment that immediately caught Yazaki's attention. He explained that if bullying were ever discovered, it would be difficult to report it honestly, especially after hearing the principal's earlier pressure on the staff. Aizawa's expression hardened as he declared that he would absolutely protect his students no matter what. He added that he wouldn't hesitate to act, even if it meant going against pressure from the school's higher gen UPS, a resolve Yazaki admired deeply. Meanwhile, inside classroom Senbi Wu, a student murmured to herself, wondering who the culprit could be in the drama they had been discussing. The girls exchanged theories about a television show, teasing that the suspicious butler was too obvious, and the neighbor's wife made a more likely culprit. Their classmate Shiori burst into the room, excitedly asking if they had figured something out, unaware of the deeper tension building around her. Aizawa entered late, noting that the bell had already rung, and announced they would continue the lesson on heredity from where they left off the day before. One of the students' expression unreadable, whispered to herself that even minor harassment could worsen dangerously if left ignored. As Aizawa lectured about the purpose of heredity, Shiori sat lost in thought, quietly saying that what he had spoken of the day before had truly shaken her. Alone in her thoughts, she questioned herself, uncertain whether what she was experiencing at school actually counted as bullying. Unsure who was even behind it, snapping back to attention, she raised her hand and called out to Aizawa, drawing his silent, searching gaze toward her. She asked if personality traits could be genetic, and Aizawa paused thoughtfully, calling it an interesting question before considering how to answer. Aizawa continued the lesson, explaining that roughly half of a person's personality could be attributed to genetics rather than upbringing. The classroom stirred as he elaborated, stating that the household environment a person grew up in didn't shape their personality as much as most people assumed, referencing an experiment involving identical twins. He explained that identical twins share bite of their genes, and researchers had studied twins raised apart in separate households to observe whether their personalities differed. Shiori listened closely as Aizawa revealed that the twins in the study ended up with strikingly similar personalities, despite growing up in different homes, disproving the idea that environment alone shaped who a person became. He added that the researchers concluded traits like attitude, integrity, and mental strength were largely hereditary based on extensive testing. When asked what determined the other half of a person's personality, if not heredity, Aizawa answered plainly that it came down to one's social group. He clarified that the influence of friends and peers was often stronger than that of family, except in cases involving abuse or seriously abnormal home environments, where the effect could be different. Before ending the topic, he told Shiori directly to remember that her personality was, for the most part, something she was born with. Steering back to the textbook, he mentioned they had gone off on a tangent, and outside the classroom, Shiori quietly caught sight of a boy named Suzuki walking by. Later, Yumi noticed Aizawa lingering nearby and asked if he was doing all right, since he had seemed distracted during class earlier that day. Aizawa brushed off her concern, saying he had simply stayed up late the night before, and their conversation shifted casually as they walked together. As they parted ways, he told her to stay safe on her way home, and Yumi turned back, hesitating slightly, addressing him softly as sensei. Alone, Yumi's expression grew serious as she wondered aloud whether he had truly been able to stop the bullying he once experienced himself. The next day, Shiori called out to him at school, admitting she couldn't stop thinking about their conversation from the day before. As she hurried off with a classmate, Yumi warned her not to be late for cram school, and Shiori apologized quickly before rushing away. Meanwhile, in the science classroom, Aizawa's expression shifted as memories from his own past began to resurface. A flashback revealed his younger self being violently attacked by classmates, one of them shouting cruelly that it was a death penalty execution. The bullies mocked him further, taunting him with a bottle they claimed contained sulfuric acid before splashing him with what turned out to be plain water, laughing at his panic. One of them sneered that it wasn't easy to get real sulfuric acid, calling him pathetic for reacting so badly to something harmless, while another figure appeared nearby. Suzuki loomed over him afterward, coldly stating that nobody needed someone like him and that there was no chance anyone ever would. The bullies laughed cruelly, mocking him and questioning why he even bothered staying alive after everything they had done to him. Aizawa, now grown, stood alone by the window, admitting quietly to himself that it was because he couldn't stop it back then that he ended up becoming who he was now. Meanwhile, Shiori arrived home, calling out that she was back, only to be greeted by her mother's mild remark that she was later than usual. She explained that she had stayed after cram school to ask her teacher some math questions, and her mother accepted the excuse without much concern. Her mother brought up her middle school years, pointing out that while everyone else went to private schools, Shiori's grades had suddenly stopped improving, and she only got into a public one. She reminded Shiori that this was an important time for her again and that she needed to keep herself together this time. Her mother admitted bluntly that for the past 3 years she had been somewhat disappointed in her daughter, a comment that visibly stung Shiori later. Shiori burst into the room with new determination, declaring confidently that this time she was certain she would get into her first-choice university. That evening, her father returned home greeted warmly by her mother for working late, while Shiori excitedly welcomed him, admitting she was starving. Over dinner, her father repeated what she had mentioned earlier about the heredity of personality, surprised that such a topic had come up during science class. Her mother, listening quietly, said she had never known that fact herself and found it interesting that it was something a teacher had brought up in school. Her father studied her for a moment, murmuring that Shiori reminded him a lot of himself. He added that they were both assertive and good at making friends, unable to leave lonely people alone. A trait Shiori found endearing. She laughed happily, admitting that hearing it made her glad since she always felt she truly resembled her father. Her father mentioned offhandedly that the teacher who brought up the topic seemed to talk about interesting things, adding that he'd like to meet him someday. Back at school, Yumi worked through a math problem with a friend, confidently explaining that she just needed to apply the right formula. Nagumo teased Yumi for being terrible at math, admitting she wasn't sure why it was mandatory in the first place, while Yumi patiently coached her through it. Watching from a distance, classmates noted that Yumi and Shiori seemed to be studying hard now, especially since Shiori had quit the basketball club to focus on her exams. As the topic of basketball came up, Shiori admitted she still loved the sport but had retired early because it was exam year, prompting a classmate to remark on how dedicated she used to be. Later, opening her locker, Shiori was confused to find her gym clothes missing, only to discover them stuffed and crumpled inside a trash bin labeled with Suzuki's name. Nagumo froze at the sight of Shiori catching her, quickly stammering that she just needed to go change while Yumi looked on. Startled, Nagumo laughed it off lightly, claiming that Sensei had simply asked her to help with something, brushing past the tension in the room. Once alone, Yumi turned to Shiori, asking uneasily whether she had really seen what just happened. Shiori stayed silent, walking through the hallway, quietly wondering why Yumi hadn't asked her anything more about it, despite clearly seeing the truth. Her mind drifted back to Aizawa's own past, remembering his words about how no one had ever truly wanted to help him when he needed it most. In another memory, young Aizawa asked what was wrong when he noticed Suzuki nearby, unaware of the cruelty that was about to unfold. Suzuki mocked him coldly, telling him it must be hard living the way he did before another boy sneered and asked why he even bothered staying alive. As Suzuki walked past a girl in the hallway with two other boys, Aizawa's expression darkened, and he murmured grimly to himself that the real hell was only just beginning. Amid basketball practice, Suzuki remained uncertainly among her classmates. Yoneda came with a grin, but Suzuki was remote. An instructor observed her distraction. Suzuki dismissed any worries, but her quiet betrayed her unease. The instructor raised up her abrupt retirement. Suzuki bowed her face, quietly regretting the choice she never truly made. With a warm grin, the instructor handed her the ball. Now wasn't about results, just the opportunity to enjoy the game once more. Enthusiasm surged as Suzuki returned to the floor after 3 months. A flawless attempt sailed through the hoop for an instant. Suspicion eased, and she believed she might be overthinking things afterward. She came Yoneda, hesitant but inquisitive. Yoneda's reply came with a grin, but her remarks stung gently, asking what had been discussed with Aizawa. Suzuki stiffened. Her face changed as astonishment and confusion swept over her all at once. As the match kept, one issue remained: what was said after she left the classroom. Care crept in. She questioned why Yoneda raised it up, her gaze exposing a trace of unease. With a bright grin, Yoneda dismissed it off and encouraged everyone to keep playing. Abruptly, an impact on the floor sent Suzuki tumbling. Alarm stiffened her in place. Teammates rushed over. Calls filled the gymnasium as Suzuki shielded her head, shaken and silent. At the clinic, the attendant acknowledged it wasn't serious. Still, she encouraged Suzuki to recover for a period. The opposite girl faulted herself, but Suzuki moved her face, insisting it was fine. Attempting to comfort her, Suzuki gave a mild expression, suggesting they could talk any time if needed. Their instructor arrived, reviewing arrangements to collect her belongings from class. Eventually alone, Suzuki shut her gaze, emotionally exhausted from everything she had been carrying. Suzuki rested in the clinic, still unresponsive. Aizawa remained close, watching in silence. As she slept calmly, he looked at her with concern. Something in his face hinted at uncertainty. Elsewhere, Yoneda remained beyond the faculty room, her eyes tracking Aizawa as he approached. When they conveyed, she questioned about Suzuki. He described her well-being and that her parent had come. Aizawa examined Yoneda's response, asking plainly was she genuinely worried about her classmate. Alarm flickered in her gaze before emotion erupted. Of course she'd be concerned. That was her companion's stares hastened as she faced away. leaving behind a quiet echo. One statement remained in his mouth: companion. A device faced up in the workplace confirmed to belong to Suzuki. Clutching the documents, he offered to deliver it himself, masking intention behind a casual smile. Her parent, oblivious of the turmoil quietly growing beneath the surface. Fingers clasped tightly, she listened in silence, opposite from her. Care was showed sincerely. Worries emerged about academic decline. He confessed hesitation about her owning a phone in the first place. Regulations at house had been rigid. Allowances came only after restated delayed returns and pressure from her husband. A picture close reconnected his eye, recollections resurfaced, momentarily pulling him into quiet reflection. Before he could speak more, she dismissed herself to take a call, departing the room abruptly. Again alone, he looked throughout the room, pretending to make a call, hands extended for a picture frame. Gaze bowed as reserved resentment stirred. Resentment slipped in a murmur: life didn't feel fair. Before ideas could calm, a mild voice called from the door. Astonishment met him. He grinned and faced response, commenting on the happy photo. Amusement concealed discomfort in the air. Interest prompted to one question. Her answer came immediately, cheerful. And without doubt, she loved her father. She gestured at the portrait, describing how the picture captured her first time riding a bike alone. Anxiety had seized her at initial, but help came without fail. Her father stayed by her side from dawn to dusk. Finally, cycling stopped being the aim. All that counted was seeing him grin. He heard silently. Memories rising, a slight grin returned to his mouth. Text alerts appeared opposite the screen. An issue remained in the atmosphere. Could something so simple really bring happiness? Amusement burst out. Of course it did. Her joy was sincere and natural. Her parent re-entered the office just as the instant settled. Interest grew. Had they called her dad? Comfort came quickly. He'd be housed shortly. She spoken, voice calm. Enthusiasm grew. She encouraged her instructor to encounter her dad, not noticing his soft, unreadable smile. The front entrance shook open as a figure hurried up the steps, voice rising in urgency. Friendly welcomes met him inside. Comfort circulated opposite his face once he saw her unharmed. Beyond, under moonlight, a reserved hope remained. He had just missed the chance to meet her father. Remorse concealed behind composed words. All that stayed was a returned object and a disappearing presence. Response indoors. Amusement filled the room. Her dad held her firmly, worrying about nothing else but her safety. Alone in her office, she looked emptily at the screen. A note from Yumi showed care. New notification popped up. This opportunity. It was from someone she didn't know. A recording clip had been knocked. Her hand paused above the display before pressing play. Alarm gripped her. The recording revealed her sleeping inside the infirmary. Awareness struck hard. That wasn't a recollection. Someone had recorded her period. She was unresponsive. Fingers trembled as the display played on. Breaths hastened. That wasn't just recording, it was invasive. The image changed. Her sleeping form was exposed, clothing raised, lacking her knowing. With a frightened gasp, she pressed aside from the desk, heart pounding in her chest. Uncertainty shifted into fear. Nothing about this felt unintended. Elsewhere aside, someone answered up the phone. Composed tone controlled, but eyes cold. This wouldn't be ignored. Dawn sunlight streamed over the school. A courteous tone questioned about Suzuki's condition. On the opposite side, care surfaced, her parent included. She'd felt ill and might need a hospital visit. It didn't sit correct. Yesterday she'd appeared all right, improved. Even something had plainly shifted. The call finished, but a reserved concern lingered. He couldn't dismiss it any further. In classroom, Yoneda remained silently. The instructor called her identity as discomfort settled across the room. Nagumo came with remorse in her tone, confessing she was the one who collided with Suzuki. None had heard response from her. Texts were read, but no answers came. Quiet bred frustration. A close student pressed for answers. Her questions faced into allegations concealed as concern. Taunting comments followed. Some acted to worry, others exposed quiet resentment. Now out loud. Behind a closed doorway, someone heard, hidden ideas remained. She was always clinging too much, wasn't she? Yoneda confessed it sometimes felt like a burden. The others observed, their quiet tapping in. She chuckled awkwardly, conceding it might be true at times. No one disagreed. From afar, someone heard, smiling faintly. He noted how thoughtful they all appeared to be. She returned to the clinic after a day of recovery, smiling politely and assuring the attendant of her improvement. Though she claimed to seem improved, the attendant reminded her of the injury's seriousness and urged caution. Inquisitive, she questioned if anyone had visited. She was unconscious. The attendant recalled that some peers had stopped by. Though nobody were mentioned by name, Elsewhere aside, a figure in an experiment coat walked alone. His name quietly brought up in doubt. The girl moved behind the instructor, his face inscrutable as they moved through the corridor. Afterward, suspicion clouded her thoughts. Despite asking, she couldn't determine who had filmed the recording. She worried talking up, exposing the recording might turn someone against her or intensify things. Instead, she grinned and welcomed everybody as if nothing had occurred, hiding her unease. Peers greeted her kindly, unaware of the turmoil she still carried within. She stepped indoors the classroom with a cheerful grin, declaring her improvement with confidence. Her companion came, expressing care over unanswered messages during her absence. Gift classroom notes, the companion attempted to lighten the mood, easing the awkwardness between them. Others gathered, relieved by her deliver and glad to see her well again, yet behind pleasant remarks. Faint blame surfaced, quietly shifting responsibility onto her shoulders. Encircled by bright expressions, she wondered who among them was hiding cruel intentions. Despite the amusement echoing throughout her, the hollowness behind the grins unsettled her deeply. The laboratory instructor introduced the day's class, oblivious of the tension lingering in the room. Paired for the experiment, the girls collaborated on the experiment, exchanging brief instructions. They conveyed of marks and accuracy, masking unspoken thoughts beneath technical conversation. Period. Attempting to concentrate on her work, she overheard classmates laughing over a video. The same one she feared. Her pulse quickened as they circulated the device around, unaware of her growing panic nearby. A student eagerly came new, eager to show the footage without considering the impact. Reacting, she rushed ahead, knocking the phone away in a burst of desperation. Rumors circulated rapidly opposite the room, drawing confused stares and concerned murmurs from classmates and teacher alike. A student marched over in anger, blaming her of damaging the phone while she tried to stay composed. Though the display stayed undamaged, the actual issue wasn't the device, it was the content. Their instructor intervened, warning everybody of the rules and the class in session. He recognized her conduct as improper, but pointed out others' faults as well. Despite objections, the device was seized, leaving behind frustration and simmering resentment. The instructor took one pupil apart, urging the group to get it together as tensions grew. Between the team, anger escalated, and silent stares spoke more than words. Off to the beside, calls questioned her actions, sensing something was deeply off. As the instructor came, she paused, burdened by all she had been holding in. Eventually collapsing down, she begged to be heard, overcome by everything she could no longer endure. With a composed grin, the instructor reassured her of his help, offering rare comfort. Before departing, he asked her to speak after noon, and she accepted with quiet gratitude. As lunchtime began, rumors about her prior reactions still lingered across the room. She came Yumi within gift, attempting to mend the strain between them. When asked to accompany others, uncertainty filled the atmosphere, and old wounds subtly stirred beneath polite smiles. Persuaded by her student, she uncertainly acknowledged the invitation, still unsure if she truly belonged. At the noon seat, talks flowed casually. The team chuckled and made arrangements. While she quietly ate, she attempted to accompany the instant, but others began confirming arrangements without including her by name. As the subject changed, one girl paused, noticing no one had included inviting Suzuki. An uneasy regret came, dismissed off with a smile, but the expression on Suzuki's face quietly froze. Student lightly raised up a note from their group chat, assuming everyone had seen it. Awareness hit her silently. A team had been created, and she hadn't been invited. She looked toward Yumi, hoping to find comfort, but saw her occupied with the others. The girl, who again remained by her now, wore a troubled face, unable to meet her eyes. Lacking a statement, Yumi remained and rapidly walked away, leaving her alone in stunned silence. Roaming the corridors in quiet, she murmured Yumi's name, but no one answered back. To her astonishment, she met Manaka, a reserved student she hadn't spoken to in a long time. He acknowledged collecting up her missing phone, sparking a light-hearted conversation between them. They shared recollections of their last interaction, sharing a few playful remarks that gentled the air. As they reconnected up, she noticed they hadn't been in the identical classroom since first year. She questioned about her class instructor, uncertain why the question felt heavier than it should. Manaka exposed something unusual. He had witnessed the teacher handling her phone personally. The fact about the device case acknowledged it. It was certainly hers. Now alone, she moved the hallway in quiet, her mind circling one issue. What was he doing? Recollections emerged every opportunity. She was bullied. He just happened to be nearby. Noticing her identity, she faced rapidly, eyes wide, recognizing the voice that called her. Aizawa came, asking lightly if she was finished eating, and proposing they move to the prep room. As she paused and attempted to refuse, he abruptly grabbed her wrist, insisting she come along. Manaka intervened quietly, calling the teacher's conduct for what it was an improper boundary crossed. Despite the objection, Aizawa grinned as if nothing had occurred, repeating his request. She remained frozen, anxiety creeping in. She bowed her face, apologizing despite his insistence that there was still opportunity exited to talk. Raising her tone, she eventually admitted it. She found him untrustworthy. His expression tightened in response. As she hurried aside, the instructor turned toward Manaka. Suddenly realizing his presence, doubt growing, Aizawa questioned whether Manaka had said something to her. Manaka acknowledged it plainly and questioned Aizawa's actions. The disturbing feeling remained. Something about the instructor felt undeniably wrong. Aizawa murmured in anger, his facade cracking for just a moment in front of Manaka. With a strained grin, he cautioned him not to get too near to Suzuki again, framing it as a favor. Elsewhere, Suzuki moved alone in thought, oblivious of the teacher's reserved command. Standing at the glass, Aizawa acknowledged her suspicion, but dismissed it off without regret. Even as she distanced herself, he observed from above, quietly vowing to continue his eyes on her no matter what. Alone in the town square, doubt clouded her thoughts. Faith felt like a remote idea now. Each expression nearby only increased the silence inside her. Would anyone believe her story? Opposite the street, a known figure emerged, Yazaki, oblivious of the turmoil in her heart. Kindly, she replied a call, her voice sunlight and welcoming. Unaware she was being watched, noticing Yazaki's bright tone, comfort slowly returned. Even an ordinary inquiry and help reduce the loneliness. Moving beyond, Yazaki quietly answered a call. She ignored her discomfort, believing she had witnessed one of her students by coincidence. She chuckled off her doubt and kept talking. On the opposite side, a tone asked to meet at a familiar hotel. Yazaki's tone gentled as she acknowledged the meeting. The figure, smiling assuredly from his vehicle, said he would come quickly. After ending the call, he looked out, expectation clear on his expression. Elsewhere, Suzuki, standing close, heard everything and whispered her love. At Seimaru Bank, a desperate figure requested a 12 million yen loan to save his failing business. He begged earnestly, presenting his business plan, believing a bit more funding would put him response on track. Banker refused, citing consecutive losses in the factory's records. The rejection was firm, supported by worries over insolvency and additional financial risks. He begged in tears, but the bank had already missing faith in his ability to repay. Desperate and trembling, the figure seized the banker's collar, fearing his company's collapse if abandoned. Remaining steady, the banker quietly questioned to be released, warning him of his growing debts and young child. Tears streamed down the man's expression as the weight of rejection broke him completely. A faint, disturbing grin appeared on the banker's face, betraying a hidden emotion. From behind, a tone called out, apologizing to Suzuki with reserved alarm. With an ordinary grin, Suzuki ignored the emotional plea as new failed attempt to gain sympathy. He stayed steady, rapidly shifting focus to his next corporate meeting without hesitation. In the hallway, colleagues gossiped, some impressed by his poise, others disturbed by his lack of empathy. Praise encircled him, with mentions of promotions and admiration from peers and superiors alike. He embraced the recognition, confident that all would continue going exactly as he desired. Suzuki rested in bed, relaxed as the woman moved on top of him, missing in pleasure. He lit a cigarette, reflecting on his undefeated streak and complete control over others. In his view, everybody throughout him, colleagues, teachers, even superiors, were fools underneath him. The woman showed satisfaction, oblivious of his detached gaze from opposite the room. He ignored her quietly, calling her just another naive and useless pawn. As the woman grinned fondly, he lit new cigarette, privately taunting her faith in his every word. She reminisced about their initial encounter at a basketball event, oblivious of his emotional detachment. Missing in the recollection, she showed quiet nostalgia, her eyes soft, thou material with their bond. She confessed moments of longing for something deeper. He embraced her, whispering reassurances, carefully concealing the manipulation underneath his affection. 1 year had circulated, and Suzuki began to see signs of attachment from the woman. Returning house, he was welcomed kindly by his wife. Though his mind stayed elsewhere, despite years of success, he confessed a rare mistake, something unforeseen in his calculated existence. He observed her closely, resentful of what he saw as dependence and burdens. A picture reminded him how trapped he became after her unexpected pregnancy. He remembered the past with bitterness, convinced she used their child to salvage a failing relationship. Returning house, he was welcomed by a bright girl, no further a burden, but someone unexpected. Though icy before, he found himself worrying seriously for her without realizing it. When questioned about campus, she replied with a cheerful grin, hiding the flash of unease that briefly crossed her face. As he poured wine and relaxed, she faced aside, her face uneasy despite his remark about her joyful look. He leaned response, satisfied, believing she had every reason to be joyful with the existence he provided. Confident in his image, he assumed his daughter saw him as a capable, proud dad. Afterward, a classroom reunion picture resurfaced his contempt for those he saw as beneath him. Elsewhere, Shiori stiffened, shocked by the praise she never sought. At campus, she silently endured more cruelty, hidden behind strained smiles and silence. A student observed Shiori's distress and uncertainly tried to speak up. Others persuaded her to report the problem, but Shiori insisted it was nothing. Forcing a grin, she faced aside, hiding her pain behind a bright expression, hoping to avoid more trouble. Afterward, a girl silently questioned permission to include Shiori in their group chat. Apologies emerged for past conduct, but suspicion still lingered in Shiori's eyes. A discussion sparked care when someone included seeing Shiori with a boy from new class. Indoors the classroom, and regret came. Shiori was accused of getting near to someone others believed off limits. Suspicion spread, some questioned if she acted with intent. Period rumors filled the room. Hamikawa's face hardened, beginning to issue Shiori's character. Down the hall, Shiori moved quietly, oblivious of the cold stares already forming. As the three circulated by, Shiori kept her face down. Period rumors followed behind them. Elsewhere, a short hallway exchange finished with a lingering glance filled with something inscrutable. Response in classroom, growing tension erupted, accusations and frustration targeted Shiori without warning. New girl was questioned about her connection to Shiori, pressed to clarify their relationship. Under urging, she dismissed their closeness entirely, departing Shiori shocked and isolated once again. Amusement echoed behind the wall, taunting Shiori as deeply to deal with. Period. One student overheard in silence. He stepped out of the shadows, silently questioning whether what he witnessed was bullying. Though uncertain, his instincts told him something wasn't correct in the way she was treated. He questioned the instructor if Shiori had shown any signs of distress or confided anything lately. With a bright grin, the instructor dismissed everything, claiming the class was problem-free. Frustrated, he questioned the instructor plainly. How could he do nothing after witnessing the signs? His tone grew, blaming him of neglecting his role while Shiori clearly struggled. Strain flared, the instructor eventually gave in, agreeing to speak though with visible hesitation. Just moments afterward, he coldly shut down the care, asking to leave the matter alone. Issue changed was his favoritism toward Shiori, concealing something deeper than simple neglect. The teacher's abrupt demand to resolve the problem exited one pupil stunned he had known all along. Afterward that day, Shiori heard her identity called and faced to see someone waiting. It was Manaka, and he questioned if she had opportunity to speak. Eagerly, she agreed, her voice bright and quick to lighten the mood. She confessed worries about Aizawa, feeling something off in his actions the previous week. Inquisitive, Shiori questioned what Manaka had discovered. He exposed he searched Aizawa's identity online. The only result was a transfer notice, linking him to Kayama Middle Campus, an identity that sounded known. They shortly uncovered the school's past scandal, a brutal bullying case that went viral half a year prior. Shitori remembered the incident vividly, shocked by its seriousness and media coverage. Then came the final link: the class instructor involved had been Aizawa. The awareness hit Shiori deeply. Her class teacher, Aizawa Yuichi, had been involved in the past scandal. Elsewhere, Suzuki prepared to leave work, overhearing a known identity connected to the classroom reunion. He recognized Shuji Ryuko, who had organized the event and still held a certain appeal to him. Tempted by the opportunity, he lightly extended out with a delayed night call. A smirk violated his expression. He planned to seduce her next. Suzuki made an ordinary call, thanking Ryuko for organizing the reunion and praising her efforts. He grinned, talking, but she corrected him. The contacts hadn't arrived from her. Ryuko trembled as she exposed someone else had orchestrated it and even knew her house address. Tears welled up as she described that the figure hadn't let go of his hatred for 20 years. Panic set in. Suzuki demanded explanations, but she confessed she was too scared to refuse him. Aizawa approaches quietly from behind. The figure ends his call, surprised by his abrupt appearance. The two expression each opposite in near proximity. Aizawa's composed expression contrasts the other's growing unease. The figure, puzzled, asks who's calling him. Aizawa's identity is exposed, triggering a wave of recognition. Alarm floods the man's expression as he realizes the one he conveyed with is Aizawa, whom he hadn't recognized until now. Suzuki is shocked to discover that Aizawa was the one who arranged the classroom reunion. They unexpectedly cross paths, and Aizawa greets Suzuki with an ordinary grin, acting it was an accident. Disturbed, ends the call and firmly tells the opposite person never to contact him again. A girl, keeping response tears, admits that the person he resents most is undoubtedly Aizawa. Distancing himself, confesses he only circulated statement about the reunion and wants no more involvement. Aizawa lightly included seeing Shuji at the reunion, noting she hadn't shifted at all. Suzuki quietly listened. Suzuki's face hardened as recollections of Aizawa resurfaced, stirring unresolved ideas. With uncertainty, Aizawa suggested they go for a drink, asking if Suzuki had opportunity to speak. They shortly sat opposite at a cafe, face silently sharing drinks under tense silence. Aizawa reflected on the reunion fondly. Suzuki noticed Aizawa hadn't forgotten a single thing. As Suzuki called his identity, Aizawa looked plainly at him and stated that the person most hated must be him. Suzuki, disturbed, questioned what Aizawa's true motive was in organizing the reunion. He leaned ahead, questioning whether their encounter that day was genuinely by chance. Aizawa's reply was composed but direct. He confessed it wasn't a coincidence. He had learned about Suzuki's workplace and remained beyond the bank to confront him. Anger boiled over as Suzuki accused Aizawa of seeking revenge through indirect tactics. In reply, Aizawa greeted his glare with a controlled challenge, questioning Suzuki's resolve. He then clarified his true intent. He wanted to express his past, not retaliate, recounting an assembly for bullying victims. Aizawa described how encounter fellow survivors shifted his outlook. He recalled the advice that healing begins by confronting the one who caused the pain. Aizawa described that if the person who harassed him apologized, it could help sever ties with his past. He confessed needing help to organize the reunion, owning searched their yearbook for someone reliable. Suzuki noticed it was Shuji who assisted, surprised Aizawa had contacted her so abruptly. Suspicion emerged in as Suzuki questioned if Aizawa wanted and regret from him. Laughing bitterly, Suzuki ignored the idea, taunting Aizawa for clinging to the past. Aizawa's eerie grin knocked a chill down Suzuki's spine as an old recollection emerged back. He dismissed himself to the restroom, departing behind the lingering weight of the past. In a flashback, Suzuki mocked a trembling boy, forcing him to catch ashes with bare fingers. Despite attempting, the boy failed, and Suzuki gleefully announced it was opportunity for punishment. Keeping the cigarette, Suzuki pondered openly how painful it would be to burn someone's skin. In a recollection filled with cruelty, Suzuki chuckled as he ignored worries about leaving scars, insisting long sleeves would hide them. Response in the present, Aizawa silently pondered whether scars like his would ever genuinely heal. Overcome, he seized his arm firmly until Suzuki extended out, but tension filled the space between them. Reacting instinctively, Aizawa lashed out and shoved Suzuki in panic and anxiety. Breathing heavily, both stiffened, shocked by what had just occurred. Aizawa attempted to brush it off with regret, but Suzuki only chuckled, hiding his true intent. Moving together, Suzuki mocked Aizawa's unchanged mental state, noting his cheap suit and timid demeanor, feigning interest. He questioned for a business card, internally ridiculing Aizawa's appearance and job. Suzuki speculated openly whether Aizawa collaborated in retail, convinced he lacked a respectable position. With a fake grin, he murmured cruelly, questioning why Aizawa hadn't died. Response in middle campus. Suzuki ignored the past as something finished much ago, treating bullying as meaningless history. Aizawa challenged that view, forcing Suzuki to confront how he would seem if someone he adored suffered the identical abuse. Suzuki responded coldly, calling victims as socially lacking and responsible for their treatment. As they moved, Aizawa heard Suzuki justified cruelty as an unavoidable result of personality. Smiling quietly, Suzuki concluded that people like that were unworthy of love or care. Suzuki moved aside, telling Aizawa not to approach him again, closing the discussion with indifference. Afterward that night, Aizawa sat alone, haunted by Suzuki's remarks, replaying them again and again, in his office. He curled into himself, encircled by reminders of the past that was supposed to be over. He looked at a picture of happier peers, questioning if those 20 years had meant anything. Elsewhere, Shoji focused on her studies, oblivious of the reserved turmoil still raging in Aizawa's mind. Aizawa reviewed his notes silently, attempting to concentrate. Unease lingered beneath his calm expression. Reports of a bullying recording resurfacing at a close campus reconnected his attention. Stirring concern, recollections of his own past experiences resurfaced, along with a confession again made by a former instructor. Shuji questioned whether that instructor had allowed the identical cruelty to repeat itself. As classroom finished, Aizawa questioned if he was overanalyzing or if the source of the video was closer than expected. Aizawa informed the classroom about an upcoming campus trip, urging everybody to behave properly. Shoji sat alone, plainly distanced from her peers as wordless strain filled the room. New pupil observed her isolation, quietly repeating her name with growing concern. He confronted Aizawa, blaming him of showing favoritism and demanding to know why she received special treatment. Before moving aside, Aizawa questioned softly if the boy was all right after what happened the day before. Shoji apologized to Manaka for departing suddenly the day before. Visibly flustered, she confessed that learning about Aizawa's connection to a bullying case had rattled her. Looking out the glass, she questioned what had occurred to the victim in the recording. Manaka faced reserved, incapable to give her an answer. Elsewhere, a pupil questioned if Aizawa, their instructor, knew the truth all along. Shoji questioned if it was okay to speak a bit further, wanting a break from the classroom. As they remained by the glass, she confessed that being alone amid class was emotionally draining. Opposite students observed and began gossiping, believing they were trying to attract attention. Beyond, Shuri spotted her old companion Yumi and softly called out to her. Yumi thanked her for the note, surprised yet touched after so much lacking contact. Yumi told Shiori it would be improved to stop talking with Manaka. Hinting at Himikawa's jealousy, Shiori protested in uncertainty, oblivious of any romantic strain, but Yumi moved off coldly. Hurt questioned if their friendship was over, her tone trembling with emotion. She recalled their shared arrangements for the campus trip and how naturally they used to speak. Lacking uncertainty, Yumi replied harshly, blaming Shiori of being unexpectedly selfish. Yumi confronted Shiori, blaming her of being a nuisance and inconsiderate amid study sessions. As she kept, Yumi suggested that Shiori's actions might be the reason behind her items being targeted. A crushing awareness washed over Shiori. She began to believe her isolation was her own fault. Lacking warning, new student delivered a violent kick that sent her flying forward. Shiori rested shocked. The girl casually claimed the act relieved her stress. A girl chuckled over the device. Someone close clenched their fist in frustration. Shiori rested motionless on the ground, silently whimpering from pain and alarm. New pupil lightly reported the incident, amused that Shiori had been kicked. Aizawa heard in quiet, then responded with a flat face, acknowledging it sounded painful. Enduring her campus bag, Shiori circulated by quietly while a boy lingered behind. Watching her leave, remarks from a student hit seriously, blaming her attitude for the bullying and discarded clothes. At the front doorway, she strained a bright greeting but paused, disturbed by the silence inside. Waiting with a heavy face, her parent broke the reserve with unexpected news. The remarks a call from campus exited Shiori, shocked, anxiety rising in her chest. Shiori's parent delivered harsh news: her test scores had fallen elsewhere below expectations. Bringing up university hopes, she reminded Shiori of the advanced classroom and their father's looming disappointment. With an uneasy grin, Shiori dismissed it off, demanding she would improve and get back on track. Her parent stayed firm, proposing she skip the upcoming campus trip due to her poor standing. Abruptly, she observed Shiori's stained uniform, demanding an explanation for her disheveled appearance. Seeing Shiori's bruised expression and dirty clothing, her parent examined her with growing concern. Arrangements were made to contact the campus, and the urging of adult decisions exited Shiori, visibly shaken. Before the discussion finished, she sailed aside, retreating down the hallway in silence. Afterward, she sat alone, clutching her device, choosing not to burden her absent dad. In her ideas, she imagined his proximity beside her, longing for reassurance she could not reach. Indoors, the experiment, Nagumo played with chemicals, humming lightly under the sunlit window. Annoyed by her carefree attitude, the instructor cautioned her to stop interfering with the equipment. Chatting, she questioned about new students' deliver, and he noted her earlier plan's success. Elsewhere, peers confronted Suzuki about being punished, believing it was finished to isolate her companion. The instructor reflected if Yumi missing her closest ally, she might side up completely alone, excited by how things were unfolding. Nagumo clenched her fists with delight. The instructor observed her energy and quiet as she assuredly claimed she could speak about anything. Smiling, she reminded him that he had been on their beside ever from that particular day. Exposing her conduct, she confessed to stuffing trash in new student's desk, expecting him to be angry. Instead, she cheerfully recognized how he had simply looked aside and overlooked it. Nagumo observed the instructor turn aside, questioning why he supported the bully instead of defending victims. Confessing indifference, he stated he preferred to avoid conflict, even if it meant turning a blind eye. She tilted her face and suggested he might savor tormenting Suzuki just as much as they did. Her suspicions increased, watching his reactions and asking if he secretly resented the girl. Inquisitive now, Nagumo questioned openly whether something unresolved had occurred between them in the past. Still at campus, the instructor received a note informing him that Suzuki had arrived. Nagumo, already aware, noted that Himekawa was leading Suzuki behind the building for a private matter. He grinned subtly, saying nothing, yet plainly acknowledging the strain beneath it all. By the wall, Suzuki faced her peers, who impatiently demanded an explanation for the encounter. With her face bowed, she silently apologized, departing the others in visible surprise. Yumi confronted Suzuki, blaming her of being selfish and oblivious of how she'd hurt her companion. Acknowledging her mistakes, Suzuki confessed that her own actions had pressed everyone away. With bowed gaze, she apologized to the team, expressing remorse if she had caused trouble. The discussion faced tense as allegations about past conduct and intentions surfaced, leaving Suzuki flustered. From the beside, Nagumo clapped gradually, praising the honesty in a voice laced with mockery. Nagumo clapped lightly, expressing how worried everybody had been about Suzuki's actions. She grinned, saying it was improved Suzuki recognized her mistakes on her own. Stepping closer, Nagumo coldly faulted all of Suzuki's suffering on her own conduct. With strained cheer, she framed the instant as an opportunity for Suzuki to change. Eventually, she demanded Suzuki list 10 personal flaws and apologize. Sitting in Seiza. Kneeling, Suzuki began listing her mistakes, including flirting with someone her companion liked. Alone and overcome, she started believing all was entirely her fault. Watching from the beside, others murmured that this was how she'd be broken down. Her wordless thought echoed the identical punishment again inflicted on her was now placed upon Suzuki. Nagumo grinned. The instructor clenched his fist and moved away, unable to intervene. After Suzuki finished listing her mistakes, the others lightly included they were thirsty. Lacking warning, they began placing drink orders, treating her like a servant. Looked coldly, demanding to know what Suzuki would be owning. Flustered, she murmured orange juice and bowed her face as they ignored her worth. Nagumo leaned closer, warning her that even Aizawa wouldn't be able to help. She ran off, convinced the instructor had taken their beside, her pulse sinking, throughout the corner. A known tone welcomed her gently. Aizawa stood quietly in the hall. Known spoken much as they moved, silence weighing heavier with each step. Pausing beyond, she looked response, unsure of whether to leave or stay. Unexpectedly, he emerged again, waiting. As if to say something exited unsaid. He silently raised up the campus trip, mentioning her mother's call. Her gaze stopped, already knowing. She strained an uneasy grin, incapable to hide her disbelief at his detached concern. Face moving, he heard as she exposed Nagumo's claim that he had taken their side. Her tone trembled, tapping more, asking if he had known about the harassment all along. Tears welled as she accused him of enabling it, comparing her pain to what he again suffered. He grinned faintly, denying any wrongdoing. Wondering openly why Nagumo would lie like that. Her tone was controlled as she gestured out a pattern he always grinned when hiding the truth. From a distance, she confessed her own mistakes but vowed to bear her pain regardless. Panic cracked through her, composed as she begged him not to circulate a certain recording. His hand slept over his body pocket, face inscrutable. He murmured about the recording, then walked away. Lying curled on her bed, she held her fist near, attempting to continue herself together. A reserved thought violated her mind. Thanks to her parent, she wouldn't have to go on the campus trip. 3 days encircled by peers felt unbearable. Avoiding it felt like a small comfort. As her gaze fluttered shut, a warm tone called her name. Her father had finally returned. He conveyed softly, saying he'd just arrived. Response from his trip. She nodded, silently processing it all. He sat beside her, softly mentioning that her parent wanted her to stay and study, instead of going on the trip. With a mild pat on her face, he assured her it was all right. He had already shifted her mind. She paused. He described how he'd coordinated all, hoping she'd enjoy the experience. A cheerful grin followed. He was keen to hear stories again. She returned from Kyoto. She wanted to object, but he replied a call and exited before she could. On the bus, the instructor reminded everybody to sit in their assigned seats as chatter filled the aisle. In the middle rows, Yumi acknowledged candy from Nagumo. The atmosphere sunlight and bright. Enthusiasm about Kyoto surged between them, though something unsaid remained behind Nagumo's smile. Suzuki boarded silently. Her gaze bowed as she circulated, and Nagumo observed her approach with veiled interest. Texting. Nagumo murmured about her arrival. Kyoto would be fun, but something else had her attention. A device display revealed Suzuki, unresponsive in bed, her uniform shirt pulled up as she slept heavily. Yumi looked at the image, Uneasy, she silently questioned what might happen if it were leaked. As the students calmed onto the train, they were reminded to stay mindful of fellow passengers. Close, one girl sat stiffly, troubled by another's sharp glance. A note on a device hinted at something malicious, a threat ready to circulate it. Gazing quietly out the glass, Aizawa sensed something amiss, his ideas already racing. The instructor came, questioning his excessive workload amid the trip. Responding with a composed grin, Aizawa deflected care, concealing his discomfort behind practiced composure. Seated beside by beside, the two teachers mentioned Aizawa's surprising decision to volunteer for extra duties amid the trip. He confessed his past avoidance, describing his desire to eventually take accountability and contribute meaningfully. Aizawa shared his purpose to help his students and help create lasting positive experiences. With a small grin, he questioned about their initial destination, prompting quiet curiosity. In the next vehicle, students buzzed eagerly about parks and temples, their energy filling the train. Several girls shared complaints about their lodging, taunting its low online rating, lacking restraint. Though they chuckled together, one girl sat quietly uneasy about what wasn't being spoken openly. Moments afterward, new pupil lightly mentioned a certain video she had found. Holding up her phone, anxiety hit the reserved girl, panic rising. As others leaned in with curiosity, concern consumed her. If the recording circulated, it would devastate Shori. Aizawa calmed the team quietly, warning them to lower their voices during the ride. His warning included a reminder about the device ban, which made one girl pause with discomfort. Just then, a faculty member circulated by prompting Aizawa to stay steady and discreet. Thanks to his timely intervention, the device remained hidden, avoiding confiscation at the last instant. Afterward, one pupil came another, requesting a private word, her tone serious. Alone in the restroom, the girl calmed herself, determined to bear the trip silently and lacking conflict. Though uncertain, she attempted to stay positive, bracing herself for a difficult discussion. The tone she heard acknowledged her concern. It was about the prior incident on the bus. New pupil exposed a recording had been shared, showing Shiori asleep in the infirmary. Shocked, she was questioned if she knew who had knocked the recording. Attempting to place sense of the situation, they concluded the culprit must be someone from within the campus. As one girl attempted to walk aside, the opposite begged with her not to show the video to others. She cautioned that if it circulated, Shiori might not recover from the damage. The anxiety of an irreversible outcome eventually sank in. A decision was made: the recording would be deleted. Underneath a composed grin, a chilling truth emerged: her interest wasn't in harm prevention but control. Elsewhere, the classroom enjoyed peaceful moments, feeding deer, the day unfolding like any opposite. Aizawa received ordinary thanks from a pupil, her face light and cheerful. She recalled his prior warning, believing it had saved her from trouble with her device. As they moved, Aizawa silently confessed astonishment at Suzuki's unexpected presence on the trip. A pupil gestured to a lone deer, inquisitive about its separation from the team. Aizawa described that male deer often isolate themselves. Unlike females who act in groups, the girl joked darkly, proposing the deer might be excluded for being unpleasant. He replied with a severe observation: bullying exists even between animals as a survival tactic. She silently reflected, noting how the weak are sometimes sacrificed to protect the team. Alone on a bench, she resolved to help Suzuki rejoin the team before things worsened. As she reflected on the recording, doubts emerged in who had actually filmed it. The promise to delete it felt hollow, and doubt remained in her mind. Elsewhere, peers mingled close, unaware of her inner turmoil. One girl took the opportunity to issue Manaka, concealing malice behind a friendly grin. Manaka heard Suzuki being criticized, accused of seeking attention from boys and abandoning friendships. Closed, Suzuki heard the discussion, her expression tightening as she walked away alone. Afterward, the team gathered at the inn, remarking on the room style while settling in. Negumo appeared distracted when questioned, brushing off care with a weak excuse. Boredom emerged in, and one girl openly questioned where Suzuki was, exposing her impatience. Suzuki calmed the team cautiously, uncertain of how she would be received. Confessing she felt lonely, she questioned if she could accompany them, her voice hesitant but hopeful. A bright reply greeted her without hesitation, the smile warm and inviting. Relieved, she gave a reserved thanks and took a seat beside them. Seeing her absence from their team group, one girl took the initiative to include her. Suzuki observed nervously as her device was handled, startled by the abrupt closeness. With the team invitation acknowledged, attention changed to bath opportunity, and everyone prepared to go together. Indoors, the steamy bathhouse, amusement echoed. The atmosphere appeared composed, even comforting. Simone observed Suzuki's absence. An excuse came. She had gone response to retrieve something from her office. Despite agreeing to include her, one girl openly criticized Suzuki's personality. New pause, torn between remorse and disapproval. Suzuki Shiori, again a cheerful and talented player, had now become a shadow of her former self. Period. Soaking in the bath, one girl mocked her control over Suzuki, hiding cruelty underneath a grin. Care circulated when others observed Suzuki hadn't returned as expected. Panic set in. One girl hurried out, only to find her device missing from the locker. Awareness dawned amid that instant of closeness. Suzuki had been watching too carefully. Awareness hit. Suzuki had memorized the lock pattern, planning to access the device behind her response. Fury erupted. The girl screamed in shock, enraged that someone she controlled had faced against her. Beyond, Suzuki unlocked the phone with shaky fingers, determined to find and delete the evidence. Focused, she scanned the device, searching for the incriminating clip. Her gaze locked onto it. Shiori, sleeping helplessly, reconnected in a malicious invasion of privacy. Suzuki acknowledged the video's date, the 2nd of June, the identical day she had been in the clinic. Awareness hit. The girl who claimed to have received the recording had actually recorded it. Roaming the hallway, Suzuki kept her face down, troubled but steady. She deleted the clip, determined to ensure it would never resurface. Despite the emotional weight, she returned to her office, attempting to set it all apart and sleep. As Suzuki returned, the others welcomed her with sharp grins and biting remarks, calling her a thief. Puzzled and uneasy, she found the team occupying the office she thought was hers. One girl leaned in, acting to grin as she questioned where her device had gone. Allegations flew. Suzuki's reserved take only fueled their doubt and rage. Despite all, the fault was shifted. Her tone was overlooked, and disappointment replaced truth. Suzuki shouted in anger, incapable to understand what she had finished to deserve such treatment. In reply, she was hit opposite the expression, silencing her as someone knocked at the door. Panic circulated as Aizawa's identity was heard. His proximity meant possible exposure. When questioned, a composed lie was gave. There was no problem. Behind her grin, the truth stayed hidden. Suzuki remained quietly, holding back tears. The teacher's quiet was misread. The students thought his inaction meant approval. Using that belief, they claimed their actions was sanctioned punishment. Suzuki resisted, but they overpowered her. One student stiffened in disbelief. Elsewhere, oblivious of what was happening, Aizawa began his nightly duties in new hallway. 3 girls restrained Suzuki. New girl stepped ahead with authority, setting the stage for what was to arrive. An icy smirk created on the leader's expression as Suzuki's discomfort deepened, her instincts warning her. The team accused her of being unclean, surrounding her with taunting grins and sharp remarks. Criticism intensified, targeting her hygiene and seeing her seem exposed and ashamed. Abruptly, water poured over her as they forcefully scrubbed her down. Ignoring her distress, Suzuki was prompted into a shower office. Noticing the humiliation had been planned from the beginning, water soaked her hair as a girl scrubbed roughly, blaming Suzuki for her own situation. Foam shielded her expression. She looked ahead, hearing that even her teammates had abandoned her. Afterward at the gymnasium, peers questioned about her decision, and Suzuki said she was leaving the club. Apologies came, but Suzuki bowed her gaze, resolved to walk away. 2 girls gave pleasant remarks, assuring Suzuki their friendship stayed despite her departure from the club. Behind her response, the identical girls murmured cruelly, dismissing her reasons and calling her selfish. In the shower, new girl grinned coldly, asking for her device as if preparing for the next act. Suzuki knelt quietly. The ringleader mocked her for still refusing to admit fault. The water's heat was raised. Suzuki screamed as commands increased harsher, demanding her obedience. One girl paused, proposing they stop. New watched in silence, tension spreading through the room. Suzuki stayed soaked as allegations changed and doubt fell on someone else standing nearby. Under urging, Suzuki was strained to deny wrongdoing. The fault was pushed harder. The leader leaned near, twisting the idea of friendship into a threat that exited no office to refuse. Both girls looked ahead in alarm, noticing how completely control and faith had been distorted. Shiori remained facing Suzuki, claiming protection. Departing her kneeling, soaked, exposed, and incapable to respond. Suzuki heard his fault was reframed, noticing Shiori now saw her as a threat. Instead, old recollections emerged of being used for convenience. Seeing the cruelty seemed deliberate and controlled, turning aside, Shiori justified all as inevitable, convincing herself Suzuki deserved such treatment. When confronted again, Shiori dismissed friendship entirely, departing Suzuki emotionally shattered and wordless in that spot. Nagumo taunted Suzuki, pointing out her isolation with a taunting grin as she bowed her face. Threat intensified when Nagumo hinted at raising the shower temperature, demanding to know where her device was. Suzuki gave in, exposing the phone's location. Nagumo's smirk increased, satisfied by her control. The girls remained assuredly. Suzuki knelt quietly, hands trembling in her lap. Nagumo questioned her again, tapping her with contradictions, waiting to break her remaining will, declaring Suzuki beyond saving. Suzuki sat soaked, wordless and shaking there. Questions came as energy eased. Yumi strained to take, unease spreading among the girls nearby. The device returned shattered, proof of cruelty, attracting shocked reactions from everybody watching there inside. Suzuki dismissed accountability, anxiety widening her gaze as blame hovered heavily over her alone still. An adult intervened suddenly, ending the abuse as authority eventually confronted the girls indoors there. Noise complaints drew severe attention, forcing discomfort opposite the faces of those involved. Panic set in as guidance counselors came and excuses abruptly felt harder to invent. Alarm filled the office as teachers arrived and saw Suzuki's drenched, trembling form. Nagumo, unfazed, grinned and ignored the scene as a harmless mistake. Feigning innocence, she claimed they had only been competing with water. Suzuki stayed wordless. Teachers demanded explanations, but Nagumo and her companion attempted to twist the situation with feigned innocence. Just then, new pupil re-entered, questioned immediately about his absence amid the incident. One counselor stayed skeptical. The opposite acknowledged the excuse of a restroom break. Punishment was ordered and the girls were told to write regret letters. Again they returned. Elsewhere, a worried student stepped in, softly covering Suzuki and offering to handle things herself. Teachers exited the office, oblivious of how much damage lingered behind their exit. Gossip circulated quickly. Assumptions painted Suzuki as a thief lacking any proof. Rumors intensified. Some claimed she wanted to sell the device. Others labeled it a crime. Nagumo acted innocent in front of an instructor, acting to reflect on the incident. With a grin, she lied about the recording, calling it a masterpiece, securing her version of the truth. Nagumo quietly described her checkup to the clinic, subtly implying her actions were harmless. Faculty member acknowledged Suzuki had been sleeping amid that time, unaware of what had occurred. A flash of a grin exposed something more sinister as Nagumo moved aside, curtains swaying behind her. Looking down at Suzuki's sleeping form, awareness eventually hit someone who had doubted her. Lacking remorse, Nagumo confessed to filming a compromising recording, smirking. Mentioning fake accounts and deleted evidence. Nagumo, unfazed, mused about needing a new plan, her grin concealing deeper malice. Her actions disgusted him. Silently, he murmured a single statement that summed up his view. The trip resumed, lacking more incidents. Suzuki stayed in her office, claiming she felt ill. Evening fell. He moved with purpose, a greeting shared in the quiet of the park. Encounter Yazaki, he recognized her efforts, but his face hinted at something more severe beneath the surface. Moving Suzuki house, Yazaki silently asked if she had been bullied during the trip. Her reply was disheartening. She claimed it was her own fault, too cornered to admit the truth. A grin created as her defender was praised for his strong emotions toward her well-being. Interest sparked suspicion, perhaps his connection ran deeper, something tied to her dad. Lacking uncertainty, Yazaki acknowledged that he was in a relationship with Suzuki's father. Allegations of an improper affair were thrown, but Yazaki firmly rejected the label, with conviction. She insisted, it wasn't just an affair, they were genuinely in love, motivated by the cruelty witnessed amid the trip. He vowed to protect Suzuki moving ahead. Yazaki made a bold declaration she had chosen to become Suzuki's parent. Determined, she resolved to stay near, oblivious of how seriously that decision would change all. Amusement erupted out uncontrollably, catching Yazaki off guard as she attempted to continue the conversation. Serious mockery came. Her claim about becoming Suzuki's parent was ignored as ridiculous and selfish. Anger grew. Yazaki reminded him of his failure to stop the bullying when it counted. He faced aside, tossing one last insult. He doubted Suzuki's dad ever adored her. Response at house. Nagumo sensed strain growing, unaware a deeper shift had already begun. A call from Yazaki appeared on the display. Nagumo stiffened, her face darkening with strain. She was interrupted by her spouse, who lightly questioned for his beer. Oblivious of the call, as she poured his drink, she included the call. He rapidly increased, suspicious, his voice changing. Lacking warning, he threw the drink in her expression, blaming her of being careless and unfaithful. Furious, he faulted her for all from bad advice to failing as a parent. His anger escalating, tears streamed down her expression as she remained beside him, seeking reassurance through small hopes. He responded softly, dismissing the instant and urging her to clean up. She grinned faintly, reassured by his denial of any betrayal. He gentled with a small laugh. Afterward, alone, he observed the opportunity and realized Shiori was running late. Shiori eventually emerged, tired and remote, her expression empty as she approached. She remained quietly by the crossing entrance, her face unreadable as the town moved around her. Rumors trailed behind her, stinging more than she let on. Their judgment came like shadows. Mockery, again hidden, now came with grins. Faith dissolved in malicious remarks masked as concern. With heavy stares, she came the platform, her ideas spiraling under the weight of rejection. But as the train circulated, clarity hit. She stepped response, trembling, haunted by what she almost chose. Suzuki faced suddenly, startled by the tone that broke the silence. His proximity wasn't expected. As he came, she questioned his motives. His ordinary reply only increased her confusion. Bitterness spilled from her remarks, blaming him of neglect when she necessary someone the most. A bitter grin concealed her anger. She gestured out his habit of staying uninvolved. Her final remarks hit deep, forcing him to confront the weight of wordless indifference. He leaned in, demanding to know if she genuinely thought he was that heartless. With clenched fists, he confessed he knew who filmed the recording, though perhaps unknowingly. Her anger erupted, blaming him of turning a blind eye to avoid involvement. Before he could respond, a call interrupted, grounding him response to new reality. Elsewhere, her device rang too, warning her someone at house still cared. With a reserved grin, he extended out his hand, gift a moment of reassurance. As her father's tone came through the device, care filled the air. She lied softly, claiming she was safe with friends. Her tone steadier than before. He gave to walk her house, brushing off the distance. She paused but called his identity from behind. His tone extended, her mild certain. He was still on her beside. Recalled the teacher's grin, composed, calculated, always appearing when truth was absent. As she moved aside, suspicion clouded her mind. Did he wear that identical face now? Elsewhere, the instructor performed his routine, delivering drinks with an easy, courteous charm. In the cafeteria, news of recognition resurfaced between the faculty, greeted with quiet acknowledgement. He remained proud, crediting himself. Yet his daughter's gaze held more questions than faith, grinned kindly and waved, attempting to appear cheerful as she greeted her father. Reminded himself to set work apart. Now was about his daughter, not business. With a relaxed voice, he questioned about the campus trip. Attempting to sound occupied, she replied momentarily, her tone low. The instant felt fragile underneath the exterior. His face tightened. Something about her reply didn't sit correct. No pictures, just pretty fun. Shikori bowed her gaze, confessing she hadn't taken any photos. Any explanation would only seem off. Her dad chuckled, brushing off her quiet with jokes about forgetfulness and broken regulations. But her fingers trembled. She eventually conveyed things at campus weren't going well at all. Until now, she had concealed all friends had faced remote. Grins had been strained. With abrupt alarm, she opened up. The remarks she'd held response began to break free. Her remarks reconnected mid-sentence as her dad ignored her pain as jealousy from others. He praised her looks and marks, convinced envy described all she faced at campus. With a reassuring grip, he encouraged her to dismiss those who hurt her, calling them trash. Grin proposing a new campus, one where she could find people on her level. His voice remained sunlight, but his words cut deep. She stiffened, uncertain how to respond. Shuri attempted to speak, but the strain stiffened her remarks as her father turned toward her. A woman emerged close, smiling softly as if her proximity was natural in this space. His face shifted in shock, incapable to process why she was suddenly standing there. Panic surged. He dismissed himself rapidly, stumbling over apologies as he fled toward the restroom. Confrontation came, allegations and uncertainty spilled out, as truths much buried threatened to surface. She confessed with a grin she had been following him ever from he exited the house. His alarm faced a panic as she exposed she'd observed their outing the entire time. Still smiling, she conveyed of joining their fractured house. Convinced it would help Shori reaching toward him, she painted a future with just the three of them after the divorce. Overcome, he questioned her to leave, hiding fear with reason, but she only grinned, confessing love. He strained a composed face, masking the chaos inside. This situation had sailed beyond his control. Returning to Shuri, he rapidly apologized, brushing apart the disruption like it meant nothing. Shuri grinned faintly and claimed it was nothing, but her attention had already changed elsewhere. She greeted with Manaka at the park, gift of abrupt but sincere regret for calling him. Lacking delay, he raised up the rumors allegations of theft were already circling throughout her. He began to issue her distance, but she cut him off with a reserved regret. Lowering her gaze, she declared she no further wanted to speak to him ever again. Puzzled, he questioned what had shifted. Her quiet replied more than remarks could. Despite her rejection, he gave to listen if she was willing to speak. As the sun set behind them, two figures remained in fragile understanding, both waiting. Manaka reacted sharply, incapable to brush off her confession as ordinary playful. Shishori bowed her gaze, confessing the bullying might have been her fault after all. But before she could spiral more, he seized her burden, shouting that nobody of it was true. He recognized how relationships could break down from personality clashes. He'd been through it too. Still, he couldn't accept her pain as deserved. What she endured was never justified. Manaka's tone grew in frustration. To him, no reason could ever justify bullying. After a pause, he gentled, softly placing a hand on her shoulder, murmuring it'd be nice to start over. Tears streamed down her expression. She longed for things to deliver to how they again were. Mentioning her friends, she questioned openly if reconciliation was even possible. Despite all, she grinned through her tears. Thanks bloomed even in the pain. Shishori confessed she could no further faith her instructor, even though he should be responsible. Although she claimed their meetings were accident, it occurred elsewhere too often to dismiss. Inquisitive, Manaka questioned to see her device, suspecting something hidden beneath the surface. Scrolling, he observed something odd, an app she didn't know, GPS tracking. Awareness struck. She remembered holding her device again, and now, it all made sense. Manaka guessed the app must have been planted, possibly keeping her under surveillance all this opportunity. Shishori couldn't wrap her face throughout it. Nobody of it made sense. Why would do this? Clutching her device, she questioned who he actually was beneath the surface. Manaka suggested asking a former pupil, especially someone tied to the past bullying. Although it appeared difficult, he hinted that he might already know someone. Manaka leaned ahead, confessing he'd been believing about it ever from their last talk. Elsewhere, the boy looked at his display, recalling the instant he claimed to be on Shiori's beside, but that promise rang hollow now, as he observed peers cruelly mock her behind her response. Online, he saw the remarks pile up, each more vicious than the last. After logging off, he exited silently, echoing pleasantries that felt numb and meaningless. Negishi remained still as the two students came in with severe expressions. They stopped before him, both visibly tense. They had arrived with a purpose, plainly enduring the weight of a difficult subject. She paused, surprised by the abrupt mention of a student, someone tied to a past she barely understood. As they moved beside by beside, he described how he had once asked his brother about Aizawa and the middle school he attended. Finally, his brother shared a fact: a pupil from that high campus remembered what had happened to the victim. Rather than continuing campus, that pupil was now working weekends at a hardware store. News that circulated through reserve gossip in town. Though her face stayed composed, she could relate to the feeling buried underneath his words. They considered the risk uncertain if confronting the boy would help, but decided to encounter him for explanations about Aizawa. Recognition resurfaced as they identified him, the boy who had again been a victim of bullying, now reserved and withdrawn. Approaching him cautiously, they questioned about the past, acknowledging the discomfort. But needing to understand what occurred a year ago, he faced aside, unwilling to speak. Demanding there was nothing to discuss as he moved off in silence. Exited behind, the girl eventually conveyed up, exposing that she, too, was being bullied. Now, Suzuki paused, acknowledging the weight of asking Negishi to revisit something he might hope to forget. Even so, the girl felt compelled to share her current struggles, believing he deserved to know her truth. Negishi dismissed it off, claiming it didn't care him. But she softly gestured out what they both shared. Her tone firmed as she spoke in the identity they both recognized: Aizawa, the instructor they had in common. Startled, Negishi stiffened. The identity alone resurfaced something in him he wasn't ready to expression. They remained in front of Negishi again, this opportunity more determined. The girl acknowledged they both necessary explanations about Aizawa. Doubt increased as the boy exposed they had found a following app on her phone, one apparently installed by Aizawa himself. To their alarm, Aizawa hadn't helped the harassed, but sided with the bullies, despite being her instructor. He did nothing. With a desperate look, the girl begged. She questioned how Aizawa had behaved. Response then, urging Negishi to tell them all. A violent recollection flooded response, shaking, breath uneven. Negishi recalled an instant of breakdown, one tied to Aizawa and the pain he endured. Aizawa remained with icy detachment, keeping a suicide note. His remarks were sharp, demanding no one would remember Negishi for much. The recollection hit Negishi deeply. Alarm washed over him as someone called his identity, drawing him out of the past. Facing the girl, he heard her admit she was going through what he again experienced. Her sincerity reconnected him off guard, but instead of connecting, he snapped. His tone grew as he rejected the idea that she could understand him at all. Sweat clung to his expression. Shaking, he declared he no further wanted to speak about that instructor or the past ever again. The girl rapidly apologized, noticing how harsh and abrupt her questions had been. Negishi heard in quiet before describing how he'd moved ahead working a part-time job, struggling, but trying to live without looking back. His face shifted abruptly, revealing a trace of bitterness. He confessed he hoped those who had tormented him were suffering now. Elsewhere, new tone described the cruelty inflicted on a pupil's severe violence, leaked personal information, even targeting his family. The girl was visibly rattled. As the discussion finished, Negishi silently excused himself. He apologized again, vowing not to burden them more, then faced and moved away. Amid the faculty encounter, teachers were reminded of upcoming parent-instructor conferences for third-year students. Worries were raised about how uneasy parents might be, especially with exams approaching. Faculty were questioned to reduce those worries responsibly. Just as the encounter was about to side, a young instructor remained up, requesting to speak, his tone serious and urgent. He addressed the office plainly, exposing that a pupil named Suzuki Shiori was currently being bullied in Class 5. The office fell into alarm. Questions erupted. One instructor demanded explanations from Aizawa, now cornered by his colleagues' abrupt scrutiny. When questioned about bullying, Aizawa ignored it immediately, claiming there were no issues. His face revealed uncertainty, not concern. Opposite faculty members recalled the incident from the campus trip, believing it had already been addressed. A colleague uncertainly agreed. New instructor stepped ahead, emotions rising. He argued that signs of bullying had been visible much before and that ignoring them was dangerous. Unmoved, Aizawa quietly questioned if there was any concrete evidence to help the claim, questioning the basis for such allegations. The face instructor encouraged everybody to calm down, suggesting the matter was being exaggerated. One senior instructor grinned dismissively, proposing the situation was harmless. He claimed Suzuki appeared to get along well and chalked it up to innocent competing. The younger instructor, frustrated, attempted to object but was rapidly silenced with passive-aggressive remarks about minding his own students instead. Aizawa interjected coldly, pointing out disruptive students in the younger teacher's classroom, implying he lacked the authority to judge others. Cornered, the young figure confessed those students existed, but his tone wavered. Taunting him, Aizawa belittled his sincerity, comparing his efforts to competing house. His smirk made it clear he didn't take any of it seriously. Overcome by humiliation and anger, the instructor clenched his shirt firmly, holding back tears as the meeting's mockery pushed him to his limit. Elsewhere in the campus, a team of girls admired a new smartphone, eagerly chatting about its features and price. One girl grinned, lightly describing how she got a discount through a personal connection. Her face was cheerful, unaffected by the strain elsewhere. Afterward, the two students who had investigated Aizawa moved the corridor in quiet. Still, the girl noted one thing: whenever Aizawa's identity came up, the people they conveyed to always reacted differently, as if guarding a truth. As the students moved down the hall, they reflected on how even Negishi had been overlooked by Aizawa. Their ideas were interrupted by a classmate's tone, sharp and insincere. She smirked and accused the girl of acting to get along with others. With a taunting grin, she announced loudly that her companion had to buy a new device because of Suzuki. Dragging in others as witnesses, anger flared as one girl stepped closer, pressuring Suzuki to pay for the device. A student attempted to de-escalate, but strain stayed thick. Collapsing the quiet, the boy beside Suzuki stepped ahead. His tone was composed but cutting, lacking uncertainty. The boy confronted the girl face-on. His remarks were blunt. He found her actions annoying. Shocked, the girl faltered. The statement echoed in her mind. Her face shifted into anger as the others walked away. Unfazed, anger overtook her. She slammed her fist into the wall and confessed her much-standing bitterness. Her grin, she confessed, had always been a lie. Elsewhere, an unofficial notice arrived. A clip stamped with the identity was circulated opposite a desk. Something significant was in motion. He was to be promoted to the main branch, eventually stepping into a role he had much awaited: manager of the initial sales department. Suzuki remained in the workplace, brimming with confidence. With this promotion, he thought his path to executive status and maybe even presidency was now in sight. The superior praised him for his past achievements, emphasizing the transfer was inevitable due to his consistent results as assistant branch manager. However, there was a warning. The promotion wouldn't be official for new month. The supervisor's face faced serious. He encouraged care, especially regarding relationships with women. Though he chuckled it off, the warning remained. Smiling firmly, Suzuki reassured them he was devoted to his wife. But behind that grin, his ideas revealed him he necessary to act immediately to protect himself. At his table, Suzuki increased tense. He took out his device, muttering that the woman he was involved with had become erratic. Determined, he drafted a note instructing her to encounter. His aim was clear: place her, delete all, even if he had to manipulate her into doing it. With a chilling smirk, he reassured himself. If there was no proof, he could dismiss her as unstable. Moving through the company, he felt invincible. In his mind, her remarks were mere delusions, and he was the one who'd be thought. With the faith of his co-workers, subordinates, and even his daughter, he felt untouchable. Cycling in the response of a vehicle, Suzuki sat smugly with a confident grin. In his mind, all was under control. At that identical instant, a young figure held a device to his ear and called out, "Can you hear me?" On the opposite side, Suzuki replied casually. But the caller wasn't who he expected. It was a different tone entirely. His parent questioned if work was going well. He paused. As he moved through town, he confessed the truth. He confessed that he was believing of quitting, describing the workplace as filled with people lacking basic morals. Smiling softly amid his device call, the young figure confessed a personal thought: he was considering marriage. Elsewhere, the campus building stayed reserved. The hallway beyond classroom 3-5 remained still, an ordinary setting now marked by building tension. Indoors, the girls talked lightly. One of them remarked that they should thank the class instructor again for returning a forgotten device, seemingly doing a good deed. The girl, who had again suffered, silently looked down. Her tone, barely audible, broke the illusion uncertainty faced to determination. Growing from her chair, she came a thread she didn't yet understand. Down the hall, an instructor grinned and greeted Suzuki into the room. The girl remained firmly, confronting the instructor with doubt in her eyes. She demanded clarity, feeling something off. Beyond, parents and students gathered for the parent-instructor conference, oblivious of the strain brewing inside the building. A boy remained quietly, clutching his shoulder. His face revealed discomfort, hinting at a hidden truth yet to unfold. A parent arrived at the classroom, expressing thanks for the teacher's recent checkup to their house. Her posture was stiff, but her remarks were courteous. He returned the sentiment with a steady grin, claiming his conduct were simply part of his role as class teacher. Doubt filled her expression. Suspicion remained behind her gaze as she questioned whether his motives were truly professional. Amid new encounter, he addressed a care directly, suggesting the real reason for bringing the phone was to install a tracking application. Shiori sat silently. He reflected openly on being observed, uncertain of the motive behind the surveillance. Shiori sat quietly as her parents scolded her, demanding attention and urging her to think about the future. Mention of Yumi raised a shift in the discussion. The instructor referred to a recent incident. Her parent, visibly tired, told her to behave. Afterward, in the hallway, they ran into Yumi and her parent. The reunion was stiff, but welcomes were shared with strained politeness. Prompted by her parent, Yumi grinned and claimed they were still best friends. Shiori looked surprised by the unexpected take. Lacking a statement, Shiori faced and walked away. Her gaze narrowed, face inscrutable, leaving Yumi stunned in the corridor. Shiori moved ahead with a stern look, her parent near behind. Yumi apologized nervously, but strain remained heavy in the atmosphere. At house, Shiori stayed withdrawn. Her parent observed her remote actions and questioned the changes she had observed lately. Elsewhere, Aizawa sat with the parent, quietly questioned if Shiori had shown any signs of trouble in her daily life. He gave a reassuring take, stating she appeared fine in class. Shiori silently affirmed, though her gaze revealed unease. With a grin, Aizawa suggested it was just adolescence. He included his own struggles again, brushing off worries about her social issues. Aizawa raised up new instructor, hinting that Suzuki had others she could rely on. The comment reconnected Shiori's attention. He included Yazaki, the basketball club advisor, as someone who had supported Suzuki in the past. Aizawa grinned, recalling their connection. Her mother's face grew strained. She noticed something deeper might be hidden in that history. Shiori confessed she still got along with Yazaki, even after departing the club, though her voice was guarded. With clear conviction, she declared Yazaki was the one instructor she genuinely trusted, pleasant, dependable, and the person she sought for advice. The instant Shiori praised Yazaki, her parents snapped. Rage overtook her face, fists clenched firmly against the table, leaving Shiori stunned, breathing heavily. She confronted Aizawa, demanding explanations about Yazaki. He gave a reserved regret, but his words lacked clarity. Lacking warning, the parent remained and excused herself. Leaving the room, Shiori called after her, puzzled. Aizawa suggested continuing the interview, hiding his care. Alone with him, Shiori exploded. She accused Aizawa of planting a following app and demanded to know his true motives. Her final issue cut deep had he finished this before. To someone named Negishi, Aizawa's composure shattered as Shiori observed, unflinching. Shiori exited the office silently, declaring she was done. Aizawa stayed behind, quietly watching her go. Elsewhere, her parent marched down the hallway, furious thoughts spiraling. She questioned if Yazaki was attempting to destroy their family. Abruptly, a bright tone interrupted her. A pupil emerged, asking if she was Shiori's parent. Recognition appeared opposite her face. The encounter was unexpected. Stirring discomfort, Shiori shortly violated paths with the identical boy who questioned if her interview was over. His voice was ordinary, oblivious of the emotional storm that had just passed. He softly took Shiori's fingers, asking if she was all right. Care filled his expression. Gift a moment of calm. Her parent shortly reappeared, recalling something Shiori had wanted to say. Emotion trembled behind her tone, but her demeanor changed again. She questioned Shiori to face house first, her tone quiet yet cold. With a mild grin, the woman described she had to speak with Yazaki. The boy's face faced unreadable. As Shiori observed them walk aside, her stares slowed. A hollow quiet came her murmur, asking her mother to wait. Shiori wandered the corridors in quiet, her mind flooded with questions. Ideas of her parent and Yazaki filled her focus. At the reception, a known expression reconnected her eye. She stiffened, shocked to know him. It was Negishi. The identity echoed in her face as she observed him speak with the front table. She questioned if he had arrived to confront Aizawa. Her gaze narrowed, studying his blank face. Uncertainty stirred. He again spoke and he wanted to forget the past. So why was he here now, willingly stepping response into it? Concern seized Shiori as she observed Negishi. She questioned if he still harbored anger toward Aizawa and if he intended to act on it. Her tone broke the strain. She called out and questioned him to wait, desperation pushing her ahead. Beyond, she demanded to know what he planned to do if he saw Aizawa again. Negishi didn't offer an actual take. With a clenched fist and gaze shadowed, he murmured, "Who knows," before moving off. Elsewhere, a figure finished a failed device call. The line beeped, unanswered, adding to the quiet already hanging over all. Anger surged through the figure as he looked at his device. The woman hadn't shown up as agreed, and now she wasn't answering his calls. He marched into the house, grumbling to himself, attempting to hide his anger. He murmured with clenched teeth. The house was dark and wordless. He questioned openly if anyone was even there. Switching the lights on, he assumed Shiori must be at cram campus. Still, something felt off alone in the kitchen. He poured a drink and attempted to shake off the strain. Tomorrow, he thought, tomorrow will be different. He attempted to rationalize her absence. It was unlike her to cancel abruptly, especially lacking a statement. What he found instead moved him. She rested in the bathtub, motionless and drenched, her arm reaching toward him with wordless despair. Panic overtook his tone as he hurried to her beside, shouting for her to hold on, demanding explanations. Tears streamed down her expression as she murmured bitterly, "I trusted you." Her tone cracked under the weight of betrayal, staggering response. Breathless, he faced the horror unfolding before him. Uncertainty faced to dread. He extended for his device, only one statement forming ambulance. Panic overtook the figure as he called for emergency help. Desperation driving every movement. Anxiety filled his thoughts. Shiori arrived just an opportunity to sense something was terribly wrong. The look on her father's expression acknowledged it before he could explain. Alarm stiffened her in spot as he blocked her path, urging her not to look. His tone trembled under the tension. A scream tore through the office when reality became unavoidable. Horror and shock overcome her senses. Clutching his daughter firmly, the figure remained helplessly for help to arrive, remorse and terror crushing him as Shiori broke down in his arms. Kneeling on the floor, the dad wrapped the bloody towels with trembling fingers. Remorse emerged in his mind. He should never have exited her with Yazaki. Shiori sobbed, blaming herself for not seeing. Her mother's hatred toward Yazaki had always been there. Yet she never understood why. Elsewhere, recollections resurfaced. He clenched the towels, convinced Yazaki must have exposed the truth to his wife, truths he had buried. Tears streaming, Shiori faced to her dad. Her tone cracked as she demanded to know what he was concealing. He sat in quiet, her identity cracking out in a murmur, the weight of guilt now undeniable. The father's face shifted with denial. He insisted he knew nothing, clinging to the belief he wouldn't be exposed, as sirens echoed in the distance. He vowed his daughter would never learn the truth. Aizawa remained silently, listening to the chaos unfold. From the rooftop, Aizawa addressed the caller. He already sensed what was coming and anticipated the questions. With a composed voice, Aizawa asked Negishi to speak, ready to confront what had been left unspoken. Resting silently in a clinic bed, the girl stayed unresponsive, her features composed despite the circumstances. Beside her, a young girl sat in quiet period of figure, likely her dad looked on. Both carried the weight of care as they observed the fragile figure underneath the blanket. Collapsing the quiet, the figure mentioned the delay caused by the police investigation. The girl gave no immediate reply, her gaze fixed downward. Doctors had acknowledged she would recover, though her injuries were severe. A further clinic stay would be necessary to monitor her well-being. As they moved through the corridor, the figure reflected on what genuinely concerned him. Troubled ideas filled the girl's mind as she moved beside the figure. She worried her secret might be exposed and debated whether she could face the person beside her. Lacking warning, she stepped ahead and embraced him, catching him off guard. His gaze widened in astonishment at the abrupt closeness. Struggling to speak through her emotions, she shared what the doctor had told her. Tears welled up in her gaze. She described that her mother's well-being could have worsened, but his quick conduct had prevented it from becoming critical. Moved by her remarks, he held her firmly in deliver, sharing an instant of quiet reconciliation. He softly reassured the girl in his arms, attempting to compose her worries as her emotions overcome her. Tears streamed down her cheeks. She clung to him, listening as he vowed to protect their family at any cost. Nodding softly, she acknowledged his remarks deep down. He knew he had extended a limit. There was no more opportunity to delay. His vehicle sped through the streets. Determination surged within him as he made a firm decision to side the affair again and for all. Standing at her doorway, he rang the bell, intent on stopping her before she could say something irreparable. She welcomed him with a bright grin, hiding her urgency. Internally, she was already planning to erase any hint of their connection, asking him in lacking uncertainty. She tried to act natural. He, however, wasted no opportunity and questioned her plainly. His face increased tense as he questioned about her discussion with his wife the day before. Lacking any sign of remorse, she confessed it casually. Her voice stayed sunlight, unaware of the tension growing in the room. The recollection returned. His wife had confronted her in person, quietly requesting that she stop contacting her spouse. Confrontation intensified quickly. His wife lashed out, blaming the girl of interfering with both her daughter and her marriage. Composed but defiant, the girl responded with a faint insult, moving fault toward the wife's behavior. Her face severe as she raised up the past, claiming the wife had trapped her husband by hiding the pregnancy. With little remorse, the girl confessed her arrangements to be with him. Still, she gave to deliver him temporarily and encouraged the wife to seek divorce properly. Indoors the office, the strain thickened. She justified her conduct, blaming his delay in ending things, smiling with expectation. The girl eagerly questioned about the divorce. She wanted to know what his wife had spoken. His face somber. With uncertainty, he exposed that his wife had attempted suicide. Alarm washed over her as he described that she had cut her wrists and was now being treated at the clinic. He shared his care for his daughter, fearing the emotional toll if statement of the affair's effect became public. Eventually, he cautioned her this might not be something their daughter could ever forgive, and the consequences were already unfolding. He raised up the text between them, expressing care that they could cause more damage if discovered. To prevent future complications, he questioned her to delete the text just in case his daughter ever came opposite them. She refused, immediately reacting with panic to her. Those texts were proof of their connection and love. Still clinging to hope, she thought the daughter might finally understand, even if bitterness came initial. Instead of staying wordless, she decided to call the daughter plainly, convinced that an open discussion could resolve all. With building confidence, she insisted they could express anything together if they made their feelings clear to his daughter. He looked down at his device, face darkening, and silently called her revolting, the weight of all finally hitting him. Reconnected off guard, she remained speechless as he ignored the situation entirely, expressing anger and exhaustion. Sitting on the floor, she heard as he coldly confessed the texts meant nothing. For him, it had been a way to pass opportunity. Rattled, she demanded an explanation, but his gaze stayed remote, questioning why she even necessary to ask. In a panic, she begged for forgiveness, gift to stay wordless and blaming herself for overstepping. With a composed but cutting grin, he described he didn't hate her, he simply felt nothing for people he used lightly. He informed her that her account had been deleted, including the texts, and that improvement was no further possible. As she hyperventilated in distress, he stayed unfazed, continuing to clean up loose ends. Eventually, he cautioned her not to act out again to others. Her pain would be ignored as the delusions of a stalker. As she panted on the floor, he observed quietly. The instant resurfaced something oddly nostalgic within him. A flashback emerged when they were younger. He used to find joy in controlling others. The recollection raised a slight smile. He faced to leave, muttering an icy farewell. Despite the chaos, he confessed she had at least been useful. Beyond, he reflected on the encounter. Though things hadn't gone perfectly, he found a shifted sense of satisfaction in how it finished. Driving aside, he made new call this opportunity to the school. A new plan was already forming in his mind. The instructor replied the device with disinterest, oblivious of the deeper intentions behind the call. Earned the line. The figure politely showed thanks and described that his daughter was unwell and would stay home for the day. He emphasized her recent injuries and reiterated that nothing counted more to him than her well-being. Listening in quiet, the instructor gave a formal reply and prepared to side the conversation. A faint smirk emerged opposite his face. He remained up, murmuring a reserved remark that hinted at something elsewhere more disturbing. At campus, students murmured in the hallway news about a classmate's family situation had already begun to circulate. Details circulated silently from one person to new, mentioning police and an ambulance witnessed near her home the night before. The next day arrived, and the campus building remained unchanged, indifferent to the strain building inside. Classroom resumed as usual, though discomfort remained among the students. Some looked toward the empty seats with interest. When she eventually arrived at the classroom, her posture was stiff and withdrawn. The attention throughout her was faint, but the weight of the rumors came every step she took. One student hurried over, loudly asking if she was all right. The abrupt attention reconnected her off guard. New pupil voiced care, exposing that rumors had already begun spreading about something serious happening at her home. Noticing the insensitivity, a girl rapidly apologized for prying, her expression filled with awkward remorse. Despite the discomfort, the peers gave reserved help, assuring her that she didn't have to face it alone. Period seated. She found a malicious attracting sailed among her things, a mockery of her mother's suicide. Her face stiffened in shock. Malicious rumors circulated at close range. Peers leaned in, repeating rumors about her parent with no care for how they sounded. One girl pressed more, smiling as she questioned the reason behind the incident, treating it like gossip instead of pain. Lacking warning, new students snapped. She hit the girl apart, incapable to tolerate the mockery any longer. The attacker shouted in fury, condemning the lack of humanity behind the rumors. Alarm rippled through the classroom. A instructor intervened immediately, demanding an explanation for the abrupt violence. The office fell into tense quiet as the damage calmed. Attention changed when someone gestured out the attracting on the floor. The office increased tense as its meaning became clear. Students rapidly attempted to downplay the situation, calling the violence excessive. Period acting the cause was unclear. And regret came, but it felt empty. Questions about stolen items and fault emerged instead of care. More apologies echoed through the classroom, spreading mechanically. Alarm registered on several expressions as consequences were mentioned. Rumors kept afterward, tying all back to her family situation. Even teachers struggled to decide how to handle the damage already finished. At house, a parent coldly ignored comparisons, demanding their family was not the identical as Shuri's. The girl responded with a strained grin, suppressing her anger. Period quietly, labeling the situation as unfair. Alone afterward, she confessed to herself that despite Shuri being less capable, she still had options and paths that felt out of reach. A discarded laundry bag with Shuri's identity on it resurfaced complicated emotions. It made something shift indoors her, smiling sweetly. She claimed it cheered her up, hiding her resentment behind a call for someone else to apologize. In the reserved classroom, she bowed her face, avoiding the other's gaze. Shame and doubt filled her every movement. She clutched her fingers, searching for reassurance. Though troubled, she convinced herself she'd finished all she could to help. The girl remained firm, refusing to break under the weight of fault. Her tone trembled, but her stance didn't waver. Strain grew as peers watched in silence. No names echoed through the atmosphere, attracting invisible lines between friend and enemy. With burning gaze, she shouted her defiance. No matter how harsh the turmoil, she vowed never to kneel before them. In the middle of the classroom, strain increased. One girl remained firm, her face defiant. Others stared in disbelief. Anger flared. The opposite girl, trembling with rage, held her cheek and glared response. Emotions swelled, betrayal, anger, and shock flooding her gaze. Rumors and allegations swirled. Someone recalled past cruelty, stolen phones, violence, and the quiet that came. Tears streamed down as the girl clutched her body. She mumbled reasons, concern, care, but her tone shook. Despite all the pain she conveyed of friendship. Even after all, she still saw the opposite girl as someone important. But her remarks were cut off, shouted down in desperation. Her tone exploded with fury. She rejected the care thrown at her, blaming the opposite girl of faking it. She questioned the issue plainly. Why had the bullying gone that far? The take came sharp and bitter. It wasn't just her. Her parent had been mocked too. Shocked, the girl attempted to explain but was cut off. In an eruption of emotion, she rushed ahead, grabbing her calls, called out. Peers froze, watching. Someone cautioned her not to take it too elsewhere. Expressions turned, tears mixed with rage. She screamed. Blaming the opposite of ignorance, all was her fault, no one understood. Her pain eventually broke through the quiet. An instructor marched into the scene, shouting at the crowd. Aizawa came silently behind, watching with a composed yet sharp gaze as chaos unfolded. Uncertainty filled the office. Aizawa's gaze scanned the wordless students. The instructor demanded explanations, his tone echoing. No one moved. No one conveyed. The instructor called on Yoneda. She sat stiffly, hesitating, her fingers clenched. Aizawa looked on, face inscrutable, as the urging to speak fell on her. Yoneda looked at Suzuki, her mouth trembled. Suzuki's gaze widened, feeling betrayal. A heavy quiet circulated between them. Yoneda eventually conveyed, blaming Suzuki of attacking Nagumo without reason. Whispers spread, witnesses nodded. Aizawa stepped ahead, softly interrupting the instructor. With composed authority, he gave to handle the situation, his gaze fixed on Suzuki, who stayed wordless. The instructor ordered the classroom response to their seats. Yoneda bowed her gaze, saying nothing. Suzuki returned silently, weighed down by hidden strain. Afterward, Suzuki cornered Yoneda. Her tone was reserved but cutting. Yoneda stiffened. There was no kindness in her remarks, only warning, resentment, and threat. In a separate corner of the campus, the girls vented their anger. Anger faced a mockery as they plotted how to deal with Suzuki next. One of them, icy and calculated, suggested a horrific plan. The others went wordless. Anxiety began to exterior. One girl frightened, warning the others about the risk of getting reconnected. New questioned what was even being suggested. Yoneda sighed, regretful. She murmured about a recording they again had something filmed in the infirmary. Suzuki's gaze widened. She questioned about the recording. Yoneda replied bluntly. It should still be saved on the server, possibly retrievable. Yoneda recalled the campus trip. She reminded Suzuki how she had deleted files to place space for more pictures. Suzuki quietly listened. From the rooftop, Suzuki confessed she had indeed finished that. She often kept random videos and photos, oblivious then how severe it would become. Suzuki noticed the recording might still be retrievable. She recalled Yoneda changing her device settings, something she hadn't fully understood at the opportunity. Yoneda acknowledged it. She had activated automatic backups on Suzuki's device, storing photos and videos in the cloud. Just in case, Suzuki fumbled with her device, recalling the password. She questioned if the data stayed even after changing devices. Yoneda nodded. It should be there. As the display loaded, an image of Nagumo emerged. Suzuki looked in quiet. The clip had been saved after all. The others were shocked. Yoneda confessed she never expected it to still exist. Suzuki and Nagumo shared wordless, heavy glances. Suzuki grinned brightly, keeping her device. She playfully scolded Yoneda for not telling her prior about the backup. Yoneda paused. Recollections of their past friendship emerged. The opposite girl commented on how they had again been near but spoken. It was good. She let go. Suzuki hugged her firmly, declaring they'd be best friends from now on. Yoneda remained frozen, her face uncertain under the embrace. Chuckled period watching old videos, pointing out a recording from a previous bullying incident. Exited alone, Yoneda looked into the distance. Her ideas echoed. Shiori made me do this. I'm not a bad person yet. Remorse weighed heavily. Indoors, the laboratory preparation room, Aizawa quietly approached Nagumo. He raised up the rumors about her recent fight and her mother's situation. Nagumo replied with a heavy truth. Her parent had attempted suicide. The pain in her tone made Aizawa freeze. She trembled as she conveyed. The girls mocked it, chuckled at her mother's suffering. She couldn't understand why they hated her so seriously. Tears streamed down her expression. She shouted that no reason could justify such cruelty. It had gone too elsewhere. Aizawa heard quietly. Then, with composed conviction, He stated the truth she necessary to hear. Bullies are just evil. Nagumo raised her tone, frustrated. She insisted the instructor didn't understand and reminded him of what she'd already confided. Quietly, Aizawa responded. He exposed his own past. He too had again been a victim of relentless bullying. He recounted how, by his 3rd year, the torment had become unbearable. The cruelty exited both emotional and physical scars that strained him into isolation. On the exterior, he thought disappearing was enough, yet underneath it all, his mind questioned, all curled up and alone. He had again questioned why he had to leave. Those who hurt him kept on without consequence. Aizawa shared a painful recollection. He had recently greeted the person who again harassed him the worst. That identical person hadn't shifted at all. Despite the years that circulated, the cruelty still remained. The figure claimed Aizawa's suffering finished 2 decades ago, but Aizawa silently dismissed it. For 20 years, the pain never exited. It wasn't just a recollection, it stayed a shadow over all. Nagumo remained still, absorbing his remarks. He confessed he had never forgiven them. Bitterness had become part of his identity. Hatred remained. Even if the pain calmed, could they ever grin like before? Aizawa questioned, did she hate them too? Nagumo trembled, her tone growing. Rage and resentment overflowed. She couldn't deny it. Hatred filled her body, threatening to consume her entirely. Elsewhere aside, the others chuckled carelessly. Their grins contrasted sharply with the weight of their cruelty. They conveyed as if their victims didn't deserve to exist. The remarks echoed in Nagumo's mind. Gradually, she murmured her agreement. Aizawa's proximity grounded her, but her pulse still burned. With conviction, Aizawa declared that bullies must expression consequences. He conveyed not with anger, but with resolve. He looked at her, confessing he had failed to punish his tormentors and that remorse had haunted him for 20 years. Aizawa extended a package toward Suzuki. His tone was composed but firm. He told her it was opportunity to side all right. Now her gaze widened in astonishment. The weight of the instant exited her, shocked and unsure how to respond. Alone in the hallway, she moved gradually, the remarks echoing in her head. Her mind was full of conflicting ideas and recollections. Response in the classroom, she seized her device. Aizawa reminded her the recording was undeniable proof. It would expose all. He added, however, that if she genuinely wanted more than just justice, there was still new paths she could take. Suzuki bowed, her face disturbed by Aizawa's intensity. His hatred toward bullying felt overwhelming, almost frightening, yet painfully sincere. Recollections resurfaced again, all felt simple. Amusement came easily when they reunited in the identical classroom before bitterness took root. Shuri's grin remained in Suzuki's ideas. Promises of eternal friendship echoed, fragile and remote, moving alone. Suzuki questioned if returning to that opportunity was even possible. Could things ever be the identical again? Her stares slowed, suspicion crept in. As Aizawa's remarks replayed in her mind, she questioned whether she was strong enough to choose new path. 2 unfamiliar boys arrived the classroom. One of them reconnected Suzuki's eye immediately. Her stares halted as her past reconnected up to her. She murmured his identity, Manaka. Her face changed from alarm to nervous recognition. The boy looked response, uncertain of her intent. Aizawa's remarks echoed in her mind. He reminded her that the final decision was hers alone. Quiet encircled her as she considered his challenge. Manaka moved past and Suzuki replied with resolve. Her tone was reserved, but her decision was clear. Okay. Elsewhere, a girl rested comfortably in bed. A device slept beside her. The post was ready, set to go live the next dawn. Nagumo grinned to herself, convinced the recording would circulate quickly. She imagined the alarm it would cause and felt a shifted sense of expectation. At campus, she observed Suzuki from afar, studying her face, checking her phone, eager to witness despair firsthand. That night, Nagumo rested on her bed, restless and excited. Tomorrow felt near, too near. A note arrived from Yumi, asking whether the recording had been shared yet. Nagumo read it quietly. She replied that it would happen in the dawn. Thanking Yumi again. The decision was set, the countdown had begun. Text kept delayed into the night. Yumi checked again more, asking if all would genuinely be safe. Nagumo replied confidently. She dismissed apart suspicion, framing tomorrow as something exciting rather than dangerous. Yumi responded with reserved enthusiasm. Expectation replaced uncertainty, and the discussion ended on a false note of reassurance. Alone, Nagumo replayed recollections of humiliation. Amusement, commands, and strained apologies resurfaced, sharp and vivid. Sitting on her bed, device in hand, she looked at old images scattered throughout her. Apologies echoed in her mind, unresolved and heavy. Suzuki looked at the display, the again joyful recollection with Yumi now distorted by betrayal and lingering resentment. For the third day, Yazaki's table stayed empty. Rumors of her kept absence circulated through the teacher's workplace, but no one had clear answers. Silently reflected on the situation. His gaze stopped, troubled by the thought that something deeper might be wrong with her. New instructor came him, smiling asking if the issue from earlier had been resolved. He reported that he was still collecting information. The principal responded firmly, handle it discreetly, especially if bullying was involved. Aizawa gave a courteous grin, concealing his discomfort. Underneath his composed appearance, he carried a wordless resolve to uncover the truth. No matter the urging, Yumi arrived at campus, her face remote. A student welcomed her kindly, flanked by two others who gave cheerful smiles and polite words. As Yumi uncertainly returned the greeting, the trio lightly teased her about their group from the night before. They referenced an online discussion, hinting that Yumi had appeared stressed. She awkwardly agreed, oblivious of the deeper intent behind their remarks. Aside from Yumi, two of the girls shared remarks. One encouraged the opposite to post something shortly, keen to witness Yumi's emotional reaction. The girl grinned sweetly, concealing malicious intent. She assured her companion it would happen amid class. Already planning the instant for maximum effect, Suzuki moved down the hallway, her face inscrutable. A student welcomed her politely, attempting to ease the tension between them. And regret came, wrapped in vague remarks. Suzuki acknowledged it with restraint, her voice neutral, as if attempting to avoid stirring anything more. From a distance, Yumi observed the exchange. Her gaze widened in astonishment. Suzuki's calm mask revealed hints of unease. In classroom, Aizawa began class. He reminded students about upcoming final exams, urging them to prepare well opposite all subjects. Despite easygoing complaints from the students, Aizawa maintained a friendly demeanor. Still, an undercurrent of strain remained underneath the ordinary routine. Amid classroom, one girl placed a hand on another's shoulder. Her remarks were ordinary, but her voice held an edge. Underneath their bright expressions hid cruel intentions. They mocked the unsuspecting peace of their classmates' existence. From her table, one of them observed Suzuki. Malice burned behind her grin. She quietly vowed to destroy the fragile composed Suzuki held onto. Suzuki silently endured, reflecting on the days of isolation. Even as she faced harassment, she stayed steady, but something indoors her had started to break. She imagined inside to Suzuki's suffering, one she would directly deliver. Her threat loomed. Concealed behind a bright face, amusement erupted in the corner of the office, hiding vicious intent. Behind her fingers, a girl sneered, relishing the strain building. Close hands hovered over the device display. A password prompt blinked response, rejecting every attempt with a icy error note. Uncertainty circulated across her face. Gaze darted toward the response of the classroom, where discomfort had already taken root. Restated inputs prompted nowhere. Suspicion emerged in was it typed wrong, or had something been shifted, lacking her knowing. Concentrate locked on one figure. Nagumo sat quietly in the office, but something in that quiet knocked a chill down her spine. Device in hand, she demanded intake. Uncertainty and anger shaped her tone, gaze locked on the one she once trusted. Gasps and scattered calls filled the office. Allegations flew, she stammered, reaching for her device in shock, incapable to comprehend the situation. A post displayed plainly an incriminating picture, capturing the instant of mockery. No office exited for denial. Her hand had moved, pen pressed to paper, encouraged by the others. Grins encircled her, but shame echoed louder than their amusement. Suzuki sprinted down the hall, uniform stained. Behind her, two girls chuckled, taunting, unbothered, enjoying the aftermath of someone else's humiliation. Noon became new stage for humiliation. Food laced with filth was pressed toward her. Close gaze watched eagerly for a reaction. Mockery came as she ate in quiet. Grins circulated between those observing, treating her discomfort as entertainment rather than cruelty. Awareness came too delayed. She remained suddenly, panic overtaking restraint, and hurried away from her desk. Amusement kept even as sickness overcome her. A device recorded all, turning suffering into shared amusement. Response in the classroom, students looked. She returned pale and shaking, keeping the phone that carried proof of what had been finished to her. Screens lit up, exposing audio and images too specific to deny. Murmured calls identified Nagumo and her circle. She slammed her fingers on the table, tone cracking as she shouted. Panic surged through her remarks. Gaze came her every move. One pupil cursed under breath, incapable to hide shock. Close. Aizawa extended for a phone, expression unreadable. He looked at the display. Lines increased between his brows, uncertainty mixed with disappointment. His tone barely broke the quiet. Accusation remained heavy in the atmosphere. Her identity was spoken, so were her conduct. There was nowhere exited to hide. Alarm widened her gaze. Opposite from her, peers pieced together what they heard, evidence they could no further dismiss. Panic overtook her tone. She shouted over the spreading awareness, denying all as her remarks cracked under urging. Whispers built throughout the room. Aizawa came, silently raising the phone. The atmosphere changed, accusation faced into certainty. Yumi scrolled through the display, horrified. Her tone trembled. The material was undeniable. This wasn't misunderstanding, it was bullying. Lacking warning, she ran. Her exit was wordless, but her remorse remained behind. Exited alone, Nagumo remained frozen, incapable to answer why. Footsteps echoed down the corridor, shouts came near behind. Uncertainty swelled with each step. No one had control anymore. Rumors reached Suzuki. Questions filled her mind. Why had things spiraled so fast? Suspicion shifted around her thoughts. Yumi ran, breath shaky. Friends came in panic, demanding explanations she couldn't give. Something had gone terribly wrong, allegations flew. Expressions turned sharp. Yumi remained frozen as hands gestured at her failure to stop what had been exposed. Desperation cracked her tone. She insisted she had no control, that her device had been locked. Her pleas, however, barely held response. The turmoil, calls cracked under urging. Allegations shifted wildly. One demanded accountability, demanding she never wanted any part of it. Hand-pointing escalated. Allegiances fell apart. No one wanted to be the one exited, faulted. Her identity, Suzuki, became the limit. Nobody dared to cross anymore. Anger burst out. If she didn't worry, why get involved? New countered, there was never a decision. Urging had kept them from moving aside. Missing in shock, she looked at the phone, her ideas scattered. Behind her, a composed tone cut through the strain. Aizawa's proximity grounded the instant. His remarks were ordinary, class wasn't over, but what had unraveled couldn't be overlooked anymore. Yumi frightened. She worried the circulated of videos. No way to stop it now. Her tone trembled as she begged for explanations. He responded plainly, conduct have consequences. Her assumptions shattered. The weight of her choices was eventually hers to hold. Never again had he taken sides. His quiet wasn't alignment, it was restraint. Nagumo's grin faltered. Her tone attempted to accuse, but the remarks lacked conviction. The issue echoed, had he tampered with her account, ignored it, lacking pause. He had no interest in her games. He'd been working. The truth necessary, no tricks, shouted in desperation, blaming Aizawa of orchestrating all. Her grip tightened throughout the device like it held her defense. He remained calm. Warnings came, not threats. If she used a device she didn't understand, the risk was her own. Panic overtook her. She ran again, breath uneven. Others observed in shocked silence. Aizawa spoken nothing more. Bayon students conveyed quietly. One had witnessed the recording. His face revealed discomfort, not alarm, just the weight of undeniable truth. Talks shifted. Classroom 5's quiet became the subject. Manaka moved gradually, gaze downcast, weighed by ideas he could no longer ignore. Everybody must have observed. There was no way they hadn't facing him in the hallway. Suzuki didn't hesitate. When he questioned about the videos, she nodded and spoken. It was all right. With a firm face, she confessed it outright. No uncertainty, no fault. Just the truth. The account hadn't been hacked. She had uploaded all herself using Nagumo's profile. Manaka remained shocked. Shock creeping in. Raising his tone, he questioned her decision. What occurred to her was awful, but revenge like this, was it actually worth it? Tears streamed as she screamed. No one necessary to remind her how malicious all had become. She knew too well. Stares slowed as she circulated her instructor. Manaka called out, but she didn't turn. Her face remained low. Aizawa softly moved beside her, asking if she was all right. Her tone came out small, barely audible, but she spoken. Yes. Elsewhere, Manaka stiffened in place. Remarks spoken prior echoed response, cruel and public. Even now it kept online. The display displayed it all. Laughing expressions. Celebrations of suffering. Thousands had witnessed it. Tears welled in her gaze. Panic overtook reason. As reality shut in, her scream echoed through the wordless building. Allegations cut deep as Yumi remained in quiet, overcome by the sting of betrayal and harsh judgment from her classmates. Afterward that night, she awoke in a panic, breath short and body trembling, incapable to escape the recollection of their remarks. Lacking a statement, she sailed past her parent, ignoring the question about breakfast as she reached for the door. A strained grin concealed the dread indoors. Her whispers and stares had already begun to spread beyond the classroom, though skipping campus violated her mind. The risk felt weightier than the anxiety itself. Online remarks ignored the recording as fake, blaming it of being staged for attention. Yumi read the remarks in quiet, her grip tightening on the device. She hoped the noise would fade rapidly. Afterward, her parents softly included a summer cram course saying she had already sent in an application on Yumi's behalf. Though money was tight, her parent gave to work night shifts to cover the cost, brushing off Yumi's care. Shocked by her mother's resolve, Yumi heard silently as she promised to help her dreams, even if the path had changed. Her mother's warm remarks remained in regret for always making Yumi suppress her feelings. After departing, Yumi struggled to breathe, remorse welling up. A thought haunted her: what if her parent discovered the truth alone beyond? She buried her expression in her arms. The weight of disappointment pressed down before anything had even been spoken. Indoors, the faculty office, tension rose. Teachers murmured about a recording spreading rapidly online. Rumors extended the principal, whose anger resurfaced. Everybody now remained on what would be spoken to the board. Aizawa observed the viral recording in quiet, the amusement echoing as colleagues speculated about his future. New instructor described that the recording likely came from a hidden camera, now removed without a trace. Abruptly, allegations burst out. Aizawa was faulted for negligence, his failure to act called inexcusable. Remorse filled the younger teacher's tone. He confessed he should have finished more to erase signs of bullying when cautioned. Staggered, Aizawa attempted to defend himself, but doubts increased. Even he began to issue whether the recording might have been altered. Aizawa squinted at the recording, disturbed by how precisely it recorded the bullying. He suspected the recording had been edited. With sweat on his brow, he encouraged others to think about the school's reputation rather than dwell on the scandal. He murmured about missing departure arrangements while fearing the media storm and its impact on the school's image. Anger boiled over as he cursed under his breath, overcome by the weight of scrutiny. Elsewhere, reports came in that the students involved were housesick. Their guardians had called in, citing poor health and stress. The classroom doorway slammed open as a furious girl marched in, attracting everyone's attention with her intense glare. Lacking uncertainty, she shouted opposite the office, demanding to know who had uploaded the controversial video to the internet. Her anger didn't stop there. She accused the entire classroom of standing by and doing nothing, blaming them for their quiet. One pupil responded coldly, refusing to be grouped with those who had plainly harmed Suzuki. Distancing himself from her conduct, others joined in, calling her out. Their remarks were sharp, calling her a criminal and condemning her for deflecting accountability. Alarm stiffened her in place. She hadn't expected the classroom to turn against her, nor the scornful glances that now welcomed her arrival. Those who again remained wordless were abruptly bold, confronting her with words she'd never imagined hearing from them. As the instructor came, he quietly requested her version of the events that had unfolded the day before. She lashed out in anger, demanding everybody already knew the truth and blaming him of pretending otherwise. Elsewhere, rumors circulated through the classroom, insults about her family and upbringing, judgment replacing the anxiety she once instilled. Rumors throughout the office faced cruel as they mocked her mother's appearance, recalling parent-teacher meetings with scorn and laughter. Himekawa's tone cracked as she attempted to speak, but anger exploded as she rushed ahead. Unable to bear the insults, Aizawa, watching closely, questioned her response. Was she genuinely upset because they insulted her parents? He confronted her quietly, warning her how she again chuckled while tormenting another girl. Looking down on others had given her a sense of control. Now cornered, she tasted the identical powerlessness she had strained on someone else. Aizawa's remarks hit hard. Her expression shifted with alarm as he questioned whether she had ever considered being in the victim's spot. He kept, quietly but firmly, pointing out that she never imagined something like this could ever happen to her. Yumi arrived just an opportunity to see Himekawa collapse to the floor. Breathing heavily, she looked in quiet. There was nothing exited to say. Moving aside from the classroom, she questioned if peace would ever return. Doubts remained, but she kept moving. Turning a corner, Yumi stiffened. Himekawa now remained before her alone, stripped of all the arrogance she again carried. Yumi remained frozen, face bowed as Shiori silently walked past. None conveyed, yet the strain was heavy between them. Shiori eventually stopped and murmured in regret. She never imagined things would turn out this way. Yumi, startled, looked up, noticing her identity called softly. With a somber face, Shiori confessed it was she who had shared the recording in their classroom group chat. Puzzled and hurt, Yumi questioned her others may have uploaded it publicly, but why did Shiori start it at all? Tears filled her gaze as she yelled, demanding explanations. There were limits, and some lines should never have been violated. Aizawa's sharp gaze widened as the phrase echoed in his face, things you can and can't do. The remarks disturbed him. Shiori came Yumi with a composed but cutting issue. Were the things Yumi did to her something she thought were acceptable? Flustered, Yumi insisted she never meant it. Urging from others exited her feeling trapped, strained to go along. But Shiori pressed more, exposing she knew Yumi had tipped off Nagumo about the clinic recording. There was no denying it. A flashback exposed Shiori pleading her case to Aizawa 2 days prior. She hadn't given up, she had attempted to expose the truth. Shiori exposed to Aizawa that she had been the one to call for help amid the campus trip, disguising her tone while using a hotel phone. She described her strategy, earning Nagumo's faith, secretly gathering proof. Aizawa nodded. The videos used to blackmail her had now been completely erased thanks to her efforts. In a flashback, it was shown that he had allowed spyware to be installed on the device, ensuring the cloud's stored data wouldn't be misused. Keeping out the monitoring phone, Aizawa described how it allowed him to reset or lock the device remotely. Every message, every trace, was under watch. Aizawa described that depending on how the information was used, Suzuki had the power to create her bullies down entirely if that was what she genuinely wanted. In private texts, Yumi and New Girl mentioned the infirmary footage. Yumi showed care about being reconnected, though she still helped willingly. Shishori's face changed when she read the final note. Just underneath the friendly voice, a warning appeared up. Yumi attempted to start innocent, but Shiori confronted her. She had witnessed the text, witnessed how bright she sounded while sharing sensitive information. Exited speechless, Yumi trailed behind. Shiori moved ahead, reserved but resolute, burdened by truths that couldn't be overlooked anymore. Shiori moved with reserved intensity, her tone trembling as she questioned what would happen to her now. Yumi came behind, her tone uncertain. She questioned if there wasn't new way, concerned that the truth spreading would destroy her future. Tears fell as she questioned if Shiori only wanted to punish her. The pain in her tone exposed anxiety deeper than shame. Shiori didn't look response, her tone was controlled. Yes, she did want punishment. A part of her wanted Yumi to see what she had felt. Crushed by remorse, Yumi collapsed to her knees. As Shiori moved aside, Yumi stayed behind. Trembling in silence, Aizawa sat alone in his apartment, arms wrapped firmly throughout his knees. The office was reserved, but his ideas were loud. A knock at the doorway startled him. A tone called out, composed but firm. Someone knew he was indoors and wasn't departing. The striking continued. The tone pressed again, warning that if he didn't open the doorway, all would be exposed, every secret. Gaze wide, Aizawa stiffened as the girl beyond accused him of owning an affair with Shiori Suzuki's father. Gradually, the doorway creaked open. He peered out, shocked, as the girl remained waiting with a reserved but chilling face. She held up a picture as evidence, proposing a deal. Both had secrets. Cooperation, not truth, would protect them now.